Hey everyone, and a very warm welcome back to Planet Time. It's so good to have you here with us. This is our little corner of the internet where we try to slow things down, get comfortable, and just allow ourselves to be curious together about our world, our history, and the universe we find ourselves in. Today, I've got a question that's been quietly sitting in the back of my mind for a while now. It's a simple one, really, but the more you think about it, the deeper it goes. What if the story of us, the story of humanity, didn't start out here, under the endless open sky? What if our story, the very first chapter, began somewhere else entirely, somewhere deep, deep underground? Before we dive into that, I'm just curious, what's it like where you are right now? Is it day, or is it night? Maybe you can hear the gentle sound of rain on your window, or perhaps it's a perfectly clear, quiet evening where the stars are just beginning to show themselves. Maybe you are on a busy train, or in a quiet room. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, I hope you're feeling safe and settled, and I'm glad we can share this time together. Have you ever been standing on a patch of soft grass, or maybe just on the pavement in a city, and you've stamped your foot? Just for the feeling of it. That solid, satisfying thump that comes right back up at you. And for just a split second, you become aware of just how much she stuff is underneath you. Miles and miles of rock, and soil, and water, and history. It is a feeling I think we've all had, that little flicker of wonder about what's really truly down there. It's a strange and powerful feeling, isn't it? To realize that the world we live on is just the thinnest of skins, a delicate surface stretched over a vast unknown interior. As we get started on this journey together, if you feel like this is a question worth exploring, maybe you could help our sleepy little signal find its way to other people who might be wondering about this too. A little tap on the like button, or a quiet subscription, helps that signal travel further than you know, and we'd be so grateful for it. So, let's do this. Find a comfortable spot. Maybe grab a cup of tea or coffee, something warm. We are not in any rush here. We are just going to explore this idea together, gently, and see where it takes us. Let's begin our journey into the feeling beneath our feet. Think about your world right now. Look around you. Chances are you're in a room with a ceiling above you. But you know that beyond that ceiling is the sky. It's our great constant, our frame of reference for everything. We look up to see the weather, to tell the time of day, to navigate by the stars. Our entire existence is oriented towards this vast openness above. Our myths speak of heavens. Our ambitions are to reach for the stars. We build towers that scrape the clouds, and we launch ourselves into the vacuum of space. Our story has always been one of looking up and expanding outwards. The horizon is a promise, a challenge. The sky is the ultimate symbol of freedom and infinite possibility. But there is another direction. Not up, but down. Not out, but in. And our relationship with that direction is complicated. It's a direction that holds a strange dual power over the human imagination. On the one hand, it calls to us. There is a deep innate pull towards what lies below. It's the thrill of exploration, the call that sends spelunkers into the mouths of caves, their small headlamps cutting through a darkness that is absolute, a darkness that has existed for millions of years. It's the patient work of the archaeologist, brushing away layers of dirt to reveal the foundations of a forgotten city, touching the lives of people who walked the earth thousands of years before. The underground is a place of secrets, of preservation. It's where we find the most precious things, the glittering gems, the veins of gold, the pure filtered water of ancient aquifers. It's a place of shelter, a refuge from the storms and the chaos of the surface. And yet, at the same time, it's a place of profound fear. It triggers some of our most primal anxieties. The fear of the dark, of being enclosed, of being buried. The fear of getting lost in a labyrinth where every direction looks the same. It's the fear of the unknown, of what creatures might exist in a world without light. The surface, for all its dangers, is familiar. The world below our feet is an alien landscape. To go down is to leave the known world behind. It's a journey into the planet's memory, into its very bones. So we have this strange push and pull. We are drawn to the secrets of the deep, but we are terrified of its embrace. And it's in this fascinating tension that our thought experiment begins. I want to be very clear about what we're doing here. This isn't a journey to prove a wild theory or uncover a hidden truth. We are not claiming that there is a lost civilization of people living in the Earth's core. Instead, we're framing this as a thought experiment. A simple, powerful question: what if? What if the story we tell ourselves about human origins is just one possible version of events? What if humanity, or at least a part of it, took a different path? A path that led not up into the sunlight, but down into the warm, quiet dark of the earth itself. Thought experiments are one of the most powerful tools we have. They allow us to explore the boundaries of what's possible. They help us understand our own reality by imagining a different one. By stepping into a hypothetical world, we can look back at our own with fresh eyes. So that's our goal here. Not to convince, but to contemplate. To imagine this alternate timeline, and in doing so, to maybe understand a little more about ourselves and the world we take for granted. Let's go back to that feeling. That simple, universal feeling of stamping on the ground. As a child, you might have done it, and wondered if the people on the other side of the world, in China, could hear you. It is a silly, beautiful thought, but it comes from a place of genuine curiosity. You are acknowledging that the ground isn't an endpoint. It is a medium. It's a place. This impulse, this curiosity about what lies beneath, is the seed of so much human knowledge. It's what drives geologists to read the story of time in layers of sedimentary rock. It's what pushes paleontologists to dig for the bones of dinosaurs, piecing together a world that existed millions of years before us. The ground beneath our feet is a library. Every layer of soil, every seam of coal, every fossilized shell is a page, a chapter in the epic story of planet Earth. But we've only read the surface. We drill and we dig, but our knowledge is like a tiny pinprick on a giant sphere. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deepest parts of our own planet. And so, the question hangs in the air. In all of that vast, unexplored space beneath us, what if something looked back? What if a culture evolved not by charting the stars in the sky, but by mapping the heat of the planet's core? Perhaps the best way to think about this is with an analogy. Imagine that our known human history is a very, very old house. We've lived in it for generations. We know the main floors intimately. We know the layout of the living room, the kitchen, the bedrooms. We've redecorated them. We've studied their history. We know where the floorboards creak. This is our recorded history, the rise and fall of empires, the great works of art, the scientific discoveries. It's the story of surface dwellers. But every old house has other places. It has a dusty attic, filled with forgotten treasures and old letters. And more importantly, it has a basement. A foundation. The foundation is the part of the house you rarely see, but it's the most important part of all. Everything else rests upon it. It holds the secrets of the house construction. It's dark and quiet, and it feels different from the rest of the home. Our thought experiment is simply this. What if we've spent all our time studying the main floors, and we've completely overlooked the possibility that someone or something has been living in the basement the entire time? What if there are stories hidden in the very foundation of our world that we've never thought to look for? Not as a spooky ghost story, but as a parallel history, A story that is just as real, just as complex, just as human as our own, but one that has been unfolding in the quiet, unseen spaces. This is the gentle, contemplative journey we're about to embark on. We're going to step away from the familiar rooms of our historical house. We are going to find the door to the basement, creak it open, and take a careful look down into the darkness, not with fear, but with a quiet and respectful curiosity. We are going to wonder together about what we might find there. We'll start by looking at the echoes of this idea in our own history, in the myths and legends that bubble up from our collective subconscious. Then we'll ground ourselves in reality, looking at the incredible underground cities that humans have actually built. We'll touch on the science that might make such an idea plausible, and then we'll let our imaginations roam, exploring what a culture without a sky might look like, their art, their bodies, their minds. This is an invitation to wonder. An invitation to look at the solid ground beneath your feet and see it not as an ending, but as a beginning. A ceiling to another world. So take a deep breath. Let the noise of the day fade away. And join me as we take our first step down into the quiet possibility of the world that waits beneath. Let the noise of the day fade away. And join me as we take our first step down into the quiet possibility of the world that waits beneath. Have you ever stood perfectly still in a field or on a quiet street and just felt the ground? Felt that incredible, reassuring solidity beneath your feet? It's something we take for granted every second of our lives. This massive planet, holding us up, offering a firm foundation for everything we do, everything we build, everything we are. We walk across it, we drive over it, we build our homes on it. But how often do we truly think about what's in it? There's a question, a very simple one, that sits at the heart of our journey together. It's a question that gently turns our entire history on its head. We're all familiar with the grand story of humanity, the one that's told in every museum and every classroom. It's a story of vast open plains, of our ancestors stepping out from the forests, looking up at the wide open sky, and beginning their slow, steady march across the continents. It is a horizontal story. A story of spreading out across the surface. But what if that isn't the only story? What if it isn't even the first? The question is this: what if the story of humanity, the very first chapter, didn't begin out in the sun, but began deep within the earth? What if the first civilization wasn't built of wood and thatch under an open sky, but was carved from stone in a warm, quiet, and eternal darkness? It sounds like a fantasy, I know. It sounds like something from a forgotten myth or a late-night movie. But for our journey, I want to ask you to set aside the idea of it being fantasy. Let's not treat it as a wild claim to be proven or disproven. Instead, let's treat it as a serious thought experiment. A different lens through which we can look at ourselves and our world. It's a way of asking what it truly means to be human by imagining a completely different path our humanity could have taken. This isn't about convincing you of a hidden truth. It's about awakening a sense of wonder. The same wonder you might have felt as a child. Do you remember that feeling? Stamping your foot on the ground, feeling that satisfying thud, and for a split second, genuinely wondering, what's down there? Far below the grass and the soil, far below the pipes and the foundations. What's really, truly, at the center of it all? It is a universal feeling, that little spark of curiosity about the world beneath our world. Think about our innate relationship with what lies below. It's a strange and powerful duality, isn't it? On one hand, there's a pull, a fascination. The allure of a cave mouth on the side of a hill is almost magnetic. It's an invitation into the unknown. Who among us hasn't felt a thrill at the thought of exploring an old tunnel or descending into the quiet, still air of a cavern? It feels like stepping into another world, one where the rules of our surface life seem to fade away. The temperature drops, the sounds change, the very air feels older, heavier with secrets. It's a feeling of sanctuary, of entering the body of the earth itself. But there's another side to it, of course. A primal fear. The fear of the dark underground, of being enclosed, of the immense weight of the world above. It's a fear that's deep within us, a part of our evolutionary wiring. The surface means light, air, freedom, escape. The underground can mean the opposite. It's a place of mystery, and we are creatures who are often frightened by what we cannot see. So we have this constant push and pull. A deep curiosity and a deep-seated caution. It's this very tension that makes the idea so compelling. We're drawn to the mystery even as we're wary of it. Our journey is about leaning into that curiosity, just for a little while, and letting the caution rest. It's about choosing to believe, just for a moment, that the pull we feel towards the earth's secret places is more than just imagination. That it might be a faint, ancestral echo. Let's frame it with a simple analogy. Imagine our world, our history, is a very, very old house. We've spent our entire lives exploring the main floors. We know the living room, the kitchen, the bedrooms. We've studied every painting on the wall, cataloged every piece of furniture. We've even climbed onto the roof to get a better look at the neighborhood. We feel like we know the house completely. But what about the basement? That deep, stone-walled foundation upon which the entire house rests. We know it's there, holding everything up, but we've never really gone down to explore it. We've been content to live on the floors, where the light comes in. This thought experiment, this whole documentary, is about us deciding to finally find that old key, to open the basement door, and to take a lantern down the stone steps. We do not know what we'll find. Maybe just dust and old pipes. But maybe, just maybe, we'll find the original blueprints of the house. Maybe we'll find that the real story of the home didn't start on the main floor, but in the foundation itself. That's all we're doing here. We're not rewriting history, we're simply wondering about the secrets held in the foundation of our very, very old house. The idea of a civilization beneath our feet forces us to reconsider everything we take for granted. We are creatures of the sun. Our lives are governed by its rising and setting. Our eyes are built to perceive its light. Our skin is designed to react to its rays. Our cultures, our religions, our very biology are all sculpted by our relationship with that star in the sky. Now, try to imagine a humanity that evolved without it. A people whose entire existence unfolded in the gentle, geothermal warmth of the planet's core. A culture where the concept of day and night doesn't exist. Where the sky isn't a vast open expanse, but a ceiling of rock glittering with phosphorescent minerals. Where constellations aren't made of distant stars, but of glowing veins of ore stretching across a cavern roof. It's a profound shift in perspective. And it's that shift that we're going to explore. We're not just going to talk about the how they would breathe, or eat, or see. We'll get to that. But first, we need to sit with the who. Who would these people be? How would they think? What would they value? What would they dream about in a world without a sky to dream of? This is why we're beginning here, with this feeling. Before we look at myths, before we look at geology or biology, we have to connect with the core emotional idea. It is a feeling of gentle curiosity. The kind of curiosity that doesn't demand immediate answers, but is happy to simply hold the question, to let it unfold. It is not the aggressive curiosity of a debate, but the soft curiosity of a quiet evening, looking up at the moon and wondering. Except in our case, we are looking down our own feet. The ground you are standing on right now, or the foundation of the building you are in, it feels static, lifeless. A solid, unmoving stage for our lives to play out upon. But we know that's not true. The earth is a living, breathing entity. It has currents of molten rock, tectonic plates that drift like continents on a sea of fire, and a heart that beats with immense heat and pressure. We live on the very thinnest layer, the cool, outer skin of a vibrant and dynamic world. We are like tiny microbes on the peel of a great apple, largely unaware of the incredible complexity and energy contained within. Our thought experiment simply proposes that life, in its infinite creativity, might not have limited itself to just the peel. That the most protected, the most stable, the most resource-rich environment on the planet might not have been the chaotic radiation-blasted surface, but the quiet, constant warmth of the world below. So, let this idea settle in. Don't fight it. Don't analyze it too hard just yet. Just let it be a gentle hum in the back of your mind. The feeling of the ground is no longer just a feeling of solidity. It is now a feeling of possibility. It is the cover of a book we never knew existed. And as we continue our journey, we're going to slowly, carefully, turn that first page. We are setting a specific tone for this journey. It is contemplative. It is calm. It is an exercise in empathy and imagination. There are enough loud noises in the world, enough frantic arguments and urgent demands for our attention. This is a space for the opposite. A space for a quiet question. We're going to wander through this idea, look at it from different angles, from the perspective of a mythologist, a geologist, an engineer, a philosopher. We'll build this hypothetical world up, piece by piece, not to prove that it is real, but to see what its existence would teach us about ourselves. So take a deep breath. Feel the weight of your own body, the gentle pull of gravity that connects you to this massive sphere of rock and iron. And feel that connection point, the soles of your feet against the floor. That's our starting point. That's the door. Everything we know is on this side of it. Everything we can imagine, everything we are about to explore is on the other. A world that might be just inches, or many miles, directly beneath you, right now. A world that chose a different path. A humanity whose story was written not in sunlight, but in stone. A world that chose a different path. A humanity whose story was written not in sunlight, but in stone. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? The thought of a civilization thriving in the deep, quiet dark. And while it might feel like a new question, a modern thought experiment, it's really not. In a way, we've been asking this question for as long as we've been telling stories. It's a whisper that echoes through our oldest myths and legends, a persistent dream from our collective past. Before we had the science to speculate, we had mythology. And in those myths, the world beneath our feet wasn't just soil and rock. It was a place of immense power, of mystery, and quite often, of entire hidden societies. These weren't just simple tales of ghouls in caves. They were rich, detailed visions of another way of being, another world running parallel to our own. Think about the ancient Greeks. When we hear the name Hades, our minds usually jump to a place of punishment, a dark and gloomy prison for the dead. But that's only a small part of the picture. The Greek underworld was a complex kingdom. It had rulers, laws, and a geography all its own. It had the sorrowful fields of Asphodel, but it also had Elysium, a paradise, a place of peace for the heroic and the virtuous. It was a complete society, a mirror to the world above, just operating under a different set of rules and without a sky. It's this idea of a structured, organized world that's so fascinating. It wasn't just chaos and monsters. It was a civilization with a purpose and a system. It tells you that, for the ancient Greeks, the world didn't just end in at the surface. They felt, deep down, that there was something more complex going on below. And this feeling wasn't unique to them. If you travel north, to the cold, windswept lands of the Norse, you find a similar idea. Their cosmos was a tree with many branches, and some of its most important roots were deep underground. One of these roots was Svartalfheim, the realm of the dwarves. Now, the dwarves of Norse mythology aren't just little men with beards who hide in caves. They are master craftsmen. They are the greatest engineers and artisans in the universe. They live deep within the mountains, in sprawling cities of their own making. It was they who forged Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and Odin's spear, Gungnir. Their halls were filled not with dread, but with the ring of hammers, the glow of forges, and the creation of objects with immense power and beauty. Svartalfheim wasn't a place of death. It was a place of industry, of secret knowledge, of incredible skill. The dwarves were the keepers of the earth's treasures, not just gold and jewels, but the secrets of metallurgy, of shaping the very bones of the world into things of legend. They were a hidden civilization whose influence was felt throughout all the other realms. Again, we see that same pattern. The world below isn't empty. It is home to beings with their own culture, their own purpose, and their own kind of wisdom. Though, you have the Greeks imagining a structured kingdom of the dead, and the Norse imagining a bustling nation of master craftsmen. Two completely different cultures, separated by vast distances and different climates, both looking down and imagining a complex society. It's like our ancestors were all sensing the same thing. That same feeling you get when you stand at the mouth of a dark cave, a mix of fear and an undeniable pull to go deeper. They felt that pull and filled in the blanks with their imaginations. They populated the darkness, not just with terrors, but with wonders. Let's shift our gaze from the west to the east, where this idea takes on an even more profound and peaceful dimension. In Tibetan Buddhist traditions, there are legends of a hidden kingdom, a place of unimaginable peace and spiritual advancement, known as Agartha or Shambhala. This isn't an underworld of spirits or smiths. Shambhala is described as a hidden paradise, a kingdom of enlightened beings who are the secret custodians of the world's wisdom. The stories say it is located deep within the earth, accessible only through hidden portals scattered in remote mountain ranges. It's a place untouched by the greed, violence, and chaos of the surface world. Its citizens are said to live in perfect harmony, possessing advanced science and a deep spiritual understanding that is far beyond our own. What's so beautiful about the legend of Shambhala is its hopefulness. It's not a place to be feared or a place where you end up after you die. It's a living, breathing world that represents the very best of what humanity could be. It is a source of great wisdom, and the prophecies say that when the surface world descends into a final, terrible war, the king of Shambhala will emerge with his armies to usher in a new golden age. It's a powerful and enduring myth. The idea that somewhere, deep beneath all our conflicts and our struggles, there is a civilization that has figured it all out. A society living in a state of grace, simply waiting for the right moment to help us. This vision is the polar opposite of the Western concept of a dark, fiery hell. Here, the inner world is the source of enlightenment. So let's just pause and take stock of what we are seeing. From the Greeks, we have the idea of a structured society beneath the surface. From the Norse, we get the idea of a culture of masters, working with the deep elements of the earth. And from the East, we have the vision of a spiritually advanced kingdom, a beacon of hope, hidden in the planet's heart. Do you see the common threads weaving through these different tales? These inner worlds are almost always a source of something the surface world lacks. They hold immense riches, like the gold and mythic artifacts in the dwarven halls. They hold the ultimate secrets of life and death, as seen in the Greek underworld, the one place where the living and the dead could potentially interact. And they hold profound wisdom and spiritual knowledge, like the enlightened teachings preserved in Shambhala. Riches, secrets, and wisdom. These are the things humanity has always strived for on the surface. And our myths consistently place those ultimate prizes deep within the earth. It's as if we've always instinctively believed that to find the truest value, you can't look up, you have to look down. You have to go deeper. This is where we can bring in our central analogy for this part of our journey. These ancient myths are like the collective dreams of humanity. Think about your own dreams. They often bring together your fears, your hopes, and your deepest questions into strange and symbolic stories. Now, imagine if all of humanity, across thousands of years and thousands of miles, kept having a similar kind of dream. A dream of a complex, hidden world, right under their feet. The details might change from culture to culture. One sees a kingdom of the dead, another a city of smiths, another a sanctuary of saints. But the core of the dream, the fundamental concept of an entire civilization below, remains remarkably consistent. The fact that so many cultures dreamt of life underground suggests it is a deep and fundamental concept to us. It speaks to a question that seems to be lodged in our very DNA. Now, it's really important to be clear here. We're not presenting these myths as proof that an underground civilization exists. That's not the point of our exploration. Instead, we are looking at them as a reflection of a persistent question in the human subconscious. The existence of these stories isn't evidence of a hidden world, but it was evidence of a hidden wonder within the human mind itself. Why did we tell ourselves these stories? Perhaps it was a way of making sense of the world. The ground beneath us is solid and dependable, but it is also a complete mystery. It is a veil. We can see the stars, but we cannot see what's happening just a few miles beneath our own homes. And the human mind has never been very good at leaving a blank space empty. We fill it with imagination. Maybe it is also a reflection of our relationship with nature. The surface world is chaotic. It has storms, droughts, wars, and constant change. The world underground in our imagination is stable. It is constant. It's protected from the whims of the sky. Is it any wonder we imagined that such a protected place might be a repository for the most important things, like wisdom and the secrets of the gods? The legend of Shambhala is perhaps the most perfect example of this. It's the ultimate expression of this hopeful vision. It takes the idea of a hidden world and transforms it into a philosophical ideal. Shambhala isn't just a place, it is a state of being. It represents a humanity that chose a different path, not just physically, but ethically and spiritually. A society that decided to progress not by expanding outwards, but by looking inwards. This dream of a better world, a wiser world, hidden from our view, is incredibly comforting. It suggests that the universe is more magical than it appears. It hints that even if we mess things up on the surface, there's a backup plan, a secret wellspring of hope, stored in the heart of the planet. These stories, from Hades to Svartalfheim to Shambhala, serve a vital purpose in our thought experiment. They show us that the foundation for our what-if question has already been laid. For millennia, humanity has been priming its own imagination for this very idea. We've been telling ourselves that life underground is not only possible, but that it might even be profound. They remind us that our fascination with the inner earth isn't just a geological curiosity. It is a spiritual and psychological one too. We feel a connection to the ground we walk on, and these myths are our way of exploring that connection. They are the first draft of an answer to that simple, universal question we all feel when we stamp our feet on the ground. What's down there? Before we had geology and seismology, we had myths. And those myths told us the answer was simple: another world. A world of immense significance, a world that holds the key to our greatest treasures, our deepest fears, and our most profound hopes. So, these stories are woven into the very fabric of our cultures, a collective dream of life below. But what happens when we stop dreaming and start digging? What happens when we discover that for some people, throughout our own history, living underground wasn't a myth at all? It was a reality. What happens when we discover that for some people, throughout our own history, living underground wasn't a myth at all? It was a reality. The line between myth and memory can be incredibly thin. We tell stories of hidden worlds for so long that we forget they might be inspired by real places. But to find the proof, we do not need a map to a fantasy kingdom. We just need to travel to a region in central Turkey, a place of strange, beautiful rock formations called Cappadocia. Here, the landscape looks like something from another planet. Wind and water have carved the soft volcanic rock into what are called fairy chimneys, tall, conical spires that dot the horizon. But the real wonder isn't what's on the surface. It's what lies just a few steps beneath your feet. This is the home of Derinkuyu. From the outside, it doesn't look like much. Just a hole in the ground, an opening in the rock. But as you step through it and begin to descend, the world changes. You're not in a simple cave. You're in the entrance to a city carved downwards into the very heart of the earth. Derinkuyu is a multi-level, subterranean complex that is simply staggering in its scale and ingenuity. It goes down at least 18 distinct levels, reaching a depth of nearly 300 feet. Think about that for a second. That's like an upside-down skyscraper, a building that chose to grow into the planet instead of away from it. And this wasn't just a small shelter. At its peak, it's believed that Derinkuyu could have housed up to 20,000 people. 20,000 people living their lives below the surface of the world. As you walk through its winding passages, you see the evidence of a complete self-sufficient society. The tunnels open up into rooms that were once homes, kitchens still blackened by ancient soot. You can see communal spaces, large caverns that would have been meeting halls or dining rooms. There are stables for livestock on the upper levels, a clever design to keep the animals close, but also to let their warmth filter down and help heat the levels below. It's the details that really bring it to life. You'll find wine and oil presses, storage rooms, and even a chapel, a place of worship carved deep in the stone with a high, vaulted ceiling. They didn't just survive down here, they lived. They built a community with all the different parts that make a society function. And perhaps most brilliantly, the entire city is connected by a web of ventilation shafts. Some of these shafts are hundreds of feet long, reaching all the way to the surface, providing a constant flow of fresh air to even the deepest levels. They also had access to clean water, drilling wells that weren't connected to the surface, making them impossible to poison from the outside. So, this wasn't some crude hideout. It was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, a city designed for long-term occupation. The question, of course, is why? Why go to such extraordinary lengths to build a world underground? The most likely answer is safety. The history of Cappadocia is one of constant invasion. For centuries, different empires and armies swept across these plains. For the people living here, the ground itself became their fortress. The entrances to Derinkuyu could be sealed from the inside by massive stone doors, like giant millstones rolled into place. They were impossible to open from the outside. If an army appeared on the horizon, the entire population could disappear into the earth, pulling their world in behind them. They could wait out the threat, for weeks or even months at a time, in their city built in stone. This place shows us, in the most concrete way possible, that the idea of living underground isn't a fantasy. It is a practical solution, a response to a harsh world. It demonstrates that when faced with a threat from the sky, whether it was an invading army or a punishing climate, humanity has looked down into the earth for sanctuary. Derinkuyu is like a fossil record of an idea, proving that the blueprint for subterranean life isn't just imaginary, it is something humans have put into practice. And what's truly fascinating is that Dirinkuo isn't alone. It's the largest of hundreds of similar underground settlements in the region. It is not a fluke. It is a tradition, a way of life that lasted for thousands of years. Once you know that a place like Dirinkuo is real, you start to see echoes of this idea all over the world. The impulse to go deep, to build within the earth, isn't unique to one culture or one time period. It seems to be a universal human response. Let's travel from the dry plains of Turkey to the lush mountains of South America, to a town called Zipaquira in Colombia. Here, deep inside a salt mine that has been active for centuries, you'll find something truly breathtaking, a cathedral. Not a small chapel, but a vast, three-sectioned Roman Catholic church, complete with a dome, chandeliers, and seating for thousands, all carved out of solid salt. As you walk down the ramps into the mine, the air grows cooler, and the light from the surface fades. It is replaced by a soft ethereal glow, as carefully placed lights illuminate the salt walls, making them gleam with translucent colors. The sheer scale of the main chamber is hard to comprehend. It feels ancient and sacred, a space completely removed from the noise and chaos of the world above. The miners who worked here for generations originally carved a small sanctuary for daily prayers, a place to ask for protection before they began their dangerous work. Over time, that small act of faith grew into the monumental structure that stands today. What's so powerful about the Salt Cathedral is that its purpose isn't just about survival. It is about spirituality. It's a conscious choice to place one of society's most important structures deep within the earth. It suggests a belief that the underground isn't a place of darkness to be feared, but a place of quiet, of protection, of being closer to something fundamental. It's a testament to the idea that we can find beauty and solace in the world beneath our feet. From a place of faith, we can find a place of commerce and community. Let's head north, to a small city on the Canadian prairies called Moose Jaw. In the early 20th century, this town became a hub for the Canadian Pacific Railway. And with the railway came a wave of Chinese immigrants, seeking a new life, but often facing intense discrimination and unfair laws on the surface. So, they built a community where they wouldn't be seen. Beneath the streets of Moose Jaw, a network of tunnels was dug. Initially, they were just utility corridors for steam pipes. But they were expanded and repurposed by the immigrant community into a hidden world. These tunnels became a place to live, to work, and to build a life away from the prejudice they faced above ground. There were laundries, kitchens, and living quarters down there. It was a city in miniature, a refuge built out of necessity. The tunnels of Moose Jaw tell a different story than Dirinkuo or the Salt Cathedral. This wasn't about escaping an invading army or creating a place of worship. It was about creating a space for a marginalized community to survive and thrive. It shows how going underground can be a social and economic solution, a way to build a parallel world when the one on the surface is unwelcoming. It's another example of a practical, real-world application of this ancient idea. It proves that subterranean living can be a response, not just to physical threats, but to social ones as well. But what if you weren't driven underground by conflict or prejudice? What if you were driven there by the climate itself? By a sun so relentless and a land so barren that the only comfortable place to live is in the cool, quiet earth? For that, we have to go to the Australian outback, to a town called Coober Pedy. This is one of the hottest, driest places on Earth. It is also the opal capital of the world. For over 100 years, people have come here to mine the precious stone. But when they arrived, they quickly realized that living on the surface was almost unbearable, with summer temperatures regularly soaring past 115 degrees Fahrenheit. So, They did what the miners have always done. They dug. Today, more than half the population of Coober Pedy lives underground. Their homes, called dugouts, are tunneled into the hillsides. From the outside, you might just see a door and a window set into a wall of rock. But step inside, and you'll find a complete, modern home. There are bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens, bathrooms, all with electricity, internet, and running water. The rock itself provides incredible insulation. No matter how scorching the heat is outside, the temperature inside a dugout stays at a comfortable, stable 75 degrees all year round, without any need for air conditioning. Coober Pedy isn't ancient history. It is happening right now. People are choosing this lifestyle not as a last resort, but as a sensible, comfortable, and even beautiful way to live in a harsh environment. They've built underground hotels, art galleries, and even churches. It is a thriving modern community that has simply inverted the usual way of doing things. Instead of building up, they build in. This town is perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence for our thought experiment. It shows that living underground isn't a relic of the past. It's a viable, ongoing solution to a very modern problem: extreme climate. As we look towards a future where more parts of our planet may face extreme heat, a place like Coober Pedy feels less like an oddity and more like a potential blueprint. So, we have Diringku, built for protection from war. We have the Salt Cathedral, carved for spiritual peace. We have the tunnels of Moose Jaw, dug for social and economic survival. And we have Coober Pedy, created for comfort in an extreme climate. When you lay these examples side by side, the theme becomes undeniable. Throughout our history, and even today, humanity hasn't just been fascinated with the idea of living underground. We've actually done it. Over and over again, in different parts of the world, for different reasons, we have arrived at the same solution. We've looked at the world around us and decided that the best place to be is inside of it. These cities, built in stone, are no longer myths. They are real, tangible places you can visit. They are the proof that our journey into this what-if scenario isn't just a flight of fancy. It's grounded in a real, recurring chapter of the human story. The question then becomes, if humanity has already taken these first steps into the earth, what if one group just kept going? It's grounded in a real, recurring chapter of the human story. The question then becomes, if humanity has already taken these first steps into the earth, what if one group just kept going? What if they weren't just digging a shelter for a season, or a bunker to wait out a war? What if they were seeking something more permanent, a home? And what if the reason for that search, the reason for turning away from the sun and sky, is written into the very first chapter of life itself? To understand that, we have to go back. Way back. Long before people, before dinosaurs, before the first fish swam in the sea. We have to go back to the very beginning of our world. It's easy for us to picture the early Earth through our modern lens. We think of a pristine, untouched paradise. A vibrant blue marble, rich with potential. But the reality, for the first billion years or so, was anything but a paradise. It was a cosmic battlefield. Imagine standing on the surface of that infant planet. There's no rich atmosphere as we know it, no protective ozone layer. The young sun, erratic and fierce, bombards the surface with unfiltered, lethal ultraviolet radiation, intense enough to sterilize anything that tried to take hold. And from above, a relentless rain of debris left over from the formation of the solar system. Asteroids and comets, some small, some the size of mountains, constantly striking the planet in a bombardment that would have boiled the early oceans and vaporized any life that dared to emerge on the surface. It was, in short, a terrible place to be. A world of fire and chaos. So, if you're looking for a safe, stable place for the delicate, fragile chemistry of life to begin? The surface is the last place you'd look. For a long time, this was a huge puzzle. The popular idea, the one we often hear, is that life began in what Charles Darwin called a warm little pond on the surface. But how could any pond, warm or otherwise, survive that kind of planetary chaos? This is where a different and truly profound idea comes into play. It's a theory called the deep hot biosphere, and it suggests something incredible, that the story of life didn't start up here, in the light. It started down there, in the dark. The theory, championed by the brilliant and unconventional scientist Thomas Gold, proposes that life didn't need the sun at all. It didn't need the surface. All it needed was protection, water, and a source of energy. And it found all three, deep within the Earth's crust. Think about it. Just a few miles of rock is the perfect shield. It's a natural bunker that makes any shelter we've ever built look flimsy. It provides absolute protection from the UV radiation and the constant asteroid impacts. Down there, the chaos of the surface world simply doesn't matter. It's calm. It's stable. And it's warm. Not from the sun, but from the planet's own internal furnace. Geothermal energy, leaking up from the mantle and the core, creates a gentle, persistent heat. It keeps water liquid and provides a steady, reliable climate, unchanging for millions, even billions of years. But what about food? What about energy? Everything we know about life on the surface is powered by the sun through photosynthesis. Plants eat light, animals eat plants. But in the total darkness of the deep earth, that rulebook goes out the window. Life down there runs on a completely different operating system. It's called chemosynthesis. Instead of eating light, the most basic organisms, ancient microbes, learned to eat rocks. They learned to consume the chemicals and minerals seeping up from the Earth's depths, things like methane, hydrogen, and sulfur. They drew their energy not from an external star 100 million miles away, but directly from the body of the planet they were living in. It's a powerful idea to sit with. That the very first spark of life on our planet might not have happened in a sunlit pond, but in a warm, dark crack in the rock, miles beneath the surface. This leads us to our central analogy for this part of our journey. Life on Earth might be like a plant. We are used to seeing the flower and leaves that grow in the sun, and that's what we think of as the plant. But the whole system, the entire thing, began with the roots, hidden away in the dark, warm soil. We surface dwellers, with our sun-based lives, might just be the late-blooming flowers of a tree whose roots run deeper than we could ever imagine. The vast majority of Earth's actual biomass, the sheer weight of living stuff, may not be in the forests and the oceans, but in this deep, hidden biosphere. A silent, living world within our own. So, you have this scientifically plausible idea that life itself found its first refuge, its first cradle, deep underground. Protected from a surface that was simply too violent to support it. The Earth's crust wasn't a tomb. It was a womb. Now, let's fast forward a few billion years. The theory of the deep hot biosphere is about those first, simple, single-celled organisms. But every good thought experiment, every what if, needs a plausible starting point. It needs an anchor in the possible. And this theory provides a stunning one for our question. Because what if, when those early humans we saw in Derinkuo were looking for shelter, they didn't just find empty caves? What if they were drawn, instinctively, to places that felt different? Places with a steady warmth, a supply of clean water, and strange, edible fungi that glowed with their own faint light. What if they stumbled upon the edges of this ancient, pre-existing ecosystem? They wouldn't have understood the science of it, of course. They wouldn't know about chemosynthesis or geothermal vents, but they would have recognized it for what it was: a sanctuary, a place that provided. This is the heart of our hypothesis for this section. Perhaps there was a great divergence in the human story, a moment where humanity stood at a crossroads. One path led out of the caves, up onto the plains, and into the sunlight. It was a path of risk and opportunity, governed by the changing seasons, the wandering herds, and the unpredictable sky. This is the path our ancestors took. But what if another group, perhaps more cautious, more contemplative, chose a different way? They looked at the stability and the safety of the deep earth, at the constant warmth and the endless supply of pure water, and they made a different choice. They decided to stay, to go deeper, to not just visit the cradle of life, but to make it their permanent home. This simple choice changes everything. It means this hypothetical civilization wouldn't see themselves as hiding. They wouldn't be surface dwellers who were forced into a bunker. They would be a people who chose to remain in their ancestral home. For them, the deep earth isn't a refuge, it is the entire world. Their relationship with the planet would be fundamentally different from ours. We live on the earth. They would live in it. Our entire existence is powered by an external source, the sun. Theirs would be powered by the planet's own internal lifeblood. It's an idea that reframes the whole scenario. They aren't invaders of the underworld. They are its native children. They didn't flee from our world. Perhaps, from their perspective, we are the ones who fled into the harsh, chaotic emptiness of the surface. So this theory, the deep, hot biosphere, does something remarkable for our journey. It takes our question, what if the first civilization is living underground? And it gives it a foundation. It provides a plausible scientific launchpad. It suggests that the deep earth isn't just dead rock, but a living, breathing system that has nurtured life for eons. A system that could, just possibly, have nurtured a different kind of humanity too. It moves our story from the realm of pure myth into the realm of speculative science. It allows us to ground our imagination in a real, incredible possibility that we share our planet with a vast, unseen world of life. And it invites us to wonder, in a more serious way, what it would truly mean to be a part of that world. And if a people did choose to stay in that warm, dark cradle, if they built their entire world without ever knowing a sunrise, what would they be like? What kind of minds, what kind of art, what kind of souls would be born in a world without a sky? And if a people did choose to stay in that warm, dark cradle, if they built their entire world without ever knowing a sunrise, what would they be like? What kind of minds, what kind of art, what kind of souls would be born in a world without a sky? It's one of those fundamental questions we could ask about this thought experiment. Because once you solve for basic survival, what's left is culture. It's the stories we tell, the things we find beautiful, the way we organize ourselves. And for this civilization, every single one of those things would be built on a foundation that is completely alien to our own. Let's start with something we all understand: art. Think about our great masterpieces. Van Gogh's Starry Night, Monet's water lilies under an open sky, the vast landscapes of the Hudson River School. So much of our creative expression is a reaction to the world outside, to the horizon, the weather, the changing of light from dawn to dusk. Now, imagine an artist who has never seen a cloud, never seen a star, whose entire concept of vastness isn't a wide open plain, but a cavern so huge its ceiling is lost in shadow. What would they even create? Their art would have to turn inward. It couldn't be representative of a world they've never seen. So, maybe it would become purely mathematical. Instead of painting a sunset, they would find beauty in the perfect, repeating geometry of a crystal. Their great works might be intricate mandalas carved into stone, representing not the cosmos above, but perhaps the elegant laws of physics that govern their world. It would be an art of patterns, of principles, of pure, unadulterated form. Or perhaps their most revered art form wouldn't be visual at all. In the constant, deep quiet of the earth, sound travels differently. A whisper can become a sermon. The drip of water from a stalactite could be a note in a symphony that lasts for 1,000 years. Music could be their primary medium, complex, layered compositions that use the natural resonance of the caves themselves as an instrument. They might become masters of sculpture, but not sculpture meant to be seen. It would be sculpture meant to be touched. Art that you experience with your fingertips, feeling the story and the texture of the stone, the cool smoothness, the rough edges. It is a world where beauty isn't something you look at, but something you feel, something you hear, something you understand on a structural level. The very concept of landscape painting would be meaningless. They would be masters of a sensory world that we, with our eyes always fixed on the horizon, have largely forgotten. From art, we naturally drift to something deeper, religion and philosophy. So much of our spiritual language is vertical. We speak of heaven above of gods on high mountains, of ascending to a higher plane. We look up for salvation, for inspiration, for divinity. But what if there is no up? Or, what if up is just a ceiling of solid rock? Their entire spiritual axis would be reoriented. Their gods wouldn't live in the clouds, they might live in the planet's core. Heaven might not be a place you go to when you die, but a state of being where you are in perfect harmony with the geothermal heartbeat of the world. Their concept of a divine force would be geologic. It would be the immense, slow, unstoppable power of plate tectonics. The life-giving warmth of a geothermal vent would be a literal miracle, a blessing from the deep. Their wise men and philosophers wouldn't look to the stars for answers about the universe. They would listen to the vibrations in the stone. They would meditate on the flow of deep aquifers. Their moral codes might be based on the principles of a closed ecosystem. Waste wouldn't just be impractical, it would be a profound sin, a disruption of the sacred balance that allows them to exist. The idea of an external, ethereal heaven would seem strange, a fantasy. For them, reality, spirituality, and existence would all be pointed inwards towards the very center of their world. Divinity wouldn't be out there, it would be right here, in the rock, and the heat, and the dark. This reorientation from a vertical world to an inward one would reshape their society too. Think about how we organize ourselves on the surface. We draw lines on a two-dimensional map. We have borders, countries, coastlines. Our sense of territory is flat. We think in terms of north, south, east, and west. A subterranean civilization's entire concept of territory would have to be three-dimensional. Their world wouldn't be a map, it would be a model. Where do you live? Wouldn't be answered with a spot on a grid. It would be a complex set of coordinates involving depth and relation to other caverns. Your nearest neighbor might not be the family in the tunnel next to yours, but the one in the cavern 500 feet directly below you. This would lead to a completely different social structure. Perhaps they'd be organized into what you could call cavern clans. A community wouldn't be defined by a shared border on a plain, but by a shared life support system, a single great cavern, a specific aquifer, a particular network of ventilation shafts. Loyalty to your level or your vein might be the most important bond there is. Warfare, if it existed, would be terrifyingly different. It wouldn't be about taking territory across a field, but about controlling access tunnels, collapsing passages to isolate an enemy, or, most devastatingly, cutting off another cavern's air or water supply. The very ideas of nation and border, as we know them, would be replaced by a complex, three-dimensional web of connections, dependencies, and rivalries. Your whole perception of community and property would be fundamentally rebuilt. It's not about owning the land, but about being a part of the structure. And perhaps the most mind-bending change of all would be their concept of time. Our lives are governed by the most obvious clock in the universe, the rising and setting of the sun. Our rhythm is day and night. It dictates when we work, when we sleep, when we eat. Our languages are filled with it. Good morning, good evening, see you tomorrow. A people who have never seen the sun would have no day. They would have no night. So how would they measure the passage of their lives? Maybe their clock would be biological. They would operate on a cycle of sleep and waking that's purely internal, not prompted by any external light. But for a whole society to function, you need a shared rhythm. You need a way to coordinate. It is more likely they would attune themselves to a different clock. Not the clock of the sun, but the clock of the planet itself. They might measure time by the slow rhythmic pulses of geothermal vents, which can ebb and flow with predictable regularity. A cycle, which might be our equivalent of a day, could be the time between two pressure shifts. Larger units of time, their years, could be marked by long-period seismic tremors that are completely unnoticeable to us on the surface, but are the fundamental metronome of their world. They would feel time, not see it. It would be a subtle shift in the warmth of the air, a change in the resonant hum of the rock. Their whole experience of being wouldn't be a sequence of bright days and dark nights, but a continuous, flowing existence, marked only by the slow, deep breath of the earth. Think about that. The word tomorrow might not even exist in their language, at least not in the way we use it. There would be no next sunrise to promise a new start. There would only be the steady, unending now. So you have a culture with an art of patterns and feelings, not images. A philosophy that finds the divine in the planet's core, not in the sky. A society built in 3 dimensions of trust and territory. A people who measure their lives by the planet's slow heartbeat. It's a world that is so fundamentally different from ours, yet it's built from the same human impulses: the need to create beauty, the search for meaning, the desire for community, and the necessity of order. They would be just as human as we are, but their humanity would be shaped by a profoundly different container. The walls of their world wouldn't be a limitless horizon, but the close, comforting, and absolute reality of stone. But to even begin to imagine this culture, we have to ask a more practical question. We've explored their minds and their souls, but how did they build the machine that allows them to live? How did they solve the fundamental engineering problems of air, water, food, and light in a world of eternal darkness? How did they turn a cave into a civilization? How did they solve the fundamental engineering problems of air, water, food, and light in a world of eternal darkness? How did they turn a cave into a civilization? It's easy to think of this as a list of obstacles, a series of impossible questions. But maybe that's our surface dweller bias showing. For a people who evolved there, these wouldn't be problems to be conquered, but systems to be understood. Their technology, their entire way of life, wouldn't be about fighting the darkness, but about harmonizing with the deep, quiet rhythms of the planet. It's a story of quiet ingenuity, of finding elegant solutions, not by imposing their will on the world, but by listening to what it was already telling them. Think of it like building a permanent submarine. You cannot just open a window to get fresh air or go to the store for food. Every single system for survival has to be self-contained, reliable, and perfectly balanced. But what if the submarine wasn't just a machine? What if it was a living part of the ocean itself? That's the kind of thinking we need to explore their world. Let's start with the most basic thing of all: the very air in your lungs. In a sealed-off cave, the air would quickly become stale, toxic, unbreathable. So, How do you ventilate a world? The first part, the answer is scale. We are not talking about a small tunnel. We are imagining cavern systems so vast they are like continents, just underground. The sheer volume of air would be immense. But even that isn't a permanent solution. You need circulation. You need a pump. And it turns out the planet itself provides one. The answer lies in geothermal energy. The same inner heat from the Earth's core that would keep them warm would also be the engine for their atmosphere. It's a simple principle you've seen in your own life. Hot air rises. Deep within the Earth, air warmed by geothermal vents would naturally rise through massive vertical fissures, towering chasms that act like planetary chimneys. As this warm air rises, it creates a pressure difference, pulling cooler, denser, more breathable air from other, lower parts of the system to replace it. It is a convection cycle on a geological scale. A slow, steady, planetary breath. The Earth itself would be their lung. It is not a machine they built, but a natural process they learned to live within, perhaps even enhance, carefully mapping and maintaining these airflow arteries. Can you imagine that? Air wouldn't just be something that's there. It would be a current, a river, a living system that connects the lower, warmer parts of their world with the upper, cooler levels. Their understanding of air would be more like our understanding of ocean currents or weather patterns. It is an incredibly elegant solution, a system where the very thing that provides warmth is also the engine that ensures a fresh breath of air. So they have warmth, and they have air. But what about water? On the surface, we are tied to a visible cycle of rain, rivers, and oceans. But deep underground, where does clean, fresh water come from? The answer is, it is already there, waiting. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth lie massive, ancient reservoirs called aquifers. These aren't just underground rivers, they are vast seas held within porous rock, filtered over millennia through layers upon layers of stone. This is some of the purest water on the planet, completely untouched by the pollution and turmoil of the surface world. For this civilization, tapping into one of these deep aquifers would be like finding a pristine, bottomless well. Their water supply wouldn't be seasonal or dependent on weather. It would be a constant, a geological certainty. Imagine the cultural difference. We look to the sky for rain, for the source of our water. They would look down into the deep rock for their source of life. Water for them would be imbued with a sense of timelessness, of purity. It wouldn't just be a drink. It would be a taste of the deep, silent history of the planet. It's like the difference between drinking from a flowing river and drinking from a spring that has been sealed for 1,000,000 years. Both give you water, but one feels connected to the fast, chaotic present, and the other feels like a communion with the past. Their relationship with this fundamental resource would be one of careful stewardship. You wouldn't pollute a source so ancient and pure. You'd treat it with a kind of reverence. So their water isn't part of a fast-moving, visible cycle like ours. It is drawn from a vast, stable reservoir, a kind of geological inheritance that they would protect at all costs. Air and water are one thing. But the next challenge is perhaps the greatest of all. Food. Michal. Our entire food chain, everything from a blade of grass to the animals that eat it, is built on one single process, photosynthesis. It is a system that runs on sunlight. So how do you feed a city of 20,000 or 200,000 in a world where the sun has never shone? You'd have to reinvent the very idea of farming. Their agriculture wouldn't be based on astronomy, on the cycles of the sun. It would be based on geology and biology. The foundation of their food chain would likely be fungi. Vast, cavernous farms wouldn't have fields of green wheat, but forests of pale, cultivated mushrooms, lichen, and other fungi that thrive in darkness, breaking down mineral-rich rock and geothermal byproducts for sustenance. And here, we find another moment of that quiet ingenuity where one solution helps solve another. Many forms of fungi and bacteria in the deep dark are bioluminescent. They glow, though their farms might also be a source of light. Imagine walking through a cavern where the crops themselves illuminate the space with a soft, ethereal glow. It's not just farming, it is a living art form. Then you have aquaculture. The deep, dark pools and rivers of their world would be teeming with life already adapted to the absence of light. Pale cave fish, translucent crustaceans, all sorts of unique creatures. Their fishing would be more like a form of careful cultivation in these silent, subterranean lakes. They would have developed senses other than sight to monitor their livestock, perhaps listening to the vibrations in the water or using a form of echolocation. And for more complex needs, they would have likely perfected a form of hydroponics, but with a crucial twist. We power our hydroponics with electric lights that try to mimic the sun. It is an energy-intensive process. They wouldn't need that. They would power their systems directly with geothermal energy, tapping the planet's heat to provide the warmth and energy their plants need. And the light. It wouldn't be the full, harsh spectrum of the sun. They would have cultivated plants that thrive on the specific wavelengths emitted by their glowing fungi, or perhaps from the faint light given off by superheated geothermal vents. Their relationship with food would be profoundly different from ours. It wouldn't be about seasons, about a spring planting and an autumn harvest. It would be a constant, careful process of cultivation and balance. A science and a sacred practice, all at once. Our farming is a partnership with a distant star. Theirs would be a deep, intimate partnership with the planet right under their feet. It's a completely self-contained system, an agriculture born from the Earth's inner warmth, not its outer light. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most poetic, engineering challenge: light itself. How do you illuminate a world of eternal night without blinding its inhabitants or consuming unsustainable amounts of energy? Again, their solution would likely be gentle and layered. They wouldn't just flip a switch and flood their world with harsh artificial light. That would be as alien to them as eternal darkness is to us. Their light would be a part of the environment, something they lived within, not something they imposed upon it. The first layer would be the geology itself. Many minerals are phosphorescent. They can absorb ambient energy from radiation or heat and emit it as a soft, gentle glow. It is plausible that they would build their cities in caverns rich with these minerals, where the walls themselves provided a faint, permanent ambient light. Vines of glowing rock would trace patterns across the ceilings and floors, a natural, ever-present starlight. The second layer, as we've touched upon, would be biological. They would cultivate life for light. Imagine entire city squares illuminated not by street lamps, but by carefully tended gardens of bioluminescent moss that carpet the walls. Tunnels lit by flowing strands of glowing fungi. The air itself might be filled with harmless, glowing insects, like a galaxy of fireflies that never goes out. Light wouldn't be a utility, it would be a garden that you tend. And for those times when a more focused light was needed, for delicate work, for reading, for art, they would use their most precious resource. But it wouldn't be for massive, citywide power grids like ours. It would be for small, localized low-level lamps, providing a warm, soft glow exactly where it was needed. Their world wouldn't be one of bright lights and dark shadows. It would be a world of 1,000 different kinds of soft light, of shifting glows, and deep, velvety darkness that was a place of comfort, not fear. Think of the difference. Our world is painted with the single, powerful, often harsh brush of the sun. Theirs would be illuminated by 1,000,000 tiny, gentle points of light, each with its own color, texture, and quality. It is the profound difference between a floodlight and candlelight. For them, light isn't a switch you flip, it is a living, breathing part of their world. Putting it all together, the air circulating from the planet's warmth, the ancient water drawn from deep reserves, the food grown in partnership with geology, and the light cultivated like a garden, you see a picture emerge. It is a technology of symbiosis. Nothing is wasted. The output of one system becomes the input for another. It's that permanent submarine we imagined, but the submarine is alive. The hull is the rock, the engine is the planet's core, and the life support systems are the very ecosystems they have learned to nurture. They wouldn't be conquerors of their environment. They would be its most integrated component, the thinking part of a living world. But that leads us to a deeper question. If you so perfectly solve the problems of your environment, if you integrate yourself so completely into its systems, how does that environment, in turn, begin to solve the problem of HE? Over thousands and thousands of years, how does a world of soft light, deep silence, and solid ceilings begin to reshape your very body? If you so perfectly solve the problems of your environment, if you integrate yourself so completely into its systems, how does that environment, in turn, begin to solve the problem of Yi? Over thousands and thousands of years, how does a world of soft light, deep silence, and solid ceilings begin to reshape your very body? It is a fundamental principle of life on Earth, one that we see all around us. Nature is a master editor. It doesn't throw things away in a dramatic flourish, it just lets them fade. The features that an organism relies on for survival are sharpened, enhanced, and perfected. And the features that are no longer needed? They soften, they shrink, they become echoes of their former selves. It's the simple, elegant logic of use it or lose it, but played out over a timescale so vast it is hard to truly comprehend. So, let's take that gentle, powerful logic and apply it to us. Let's imagine our ancestors, generations upon generations of them, living and thriving in the warm, stable dark. What would be the very first thing the environment would begin to edit? It would almost certainly be our eyes. Our eyes are instruments built for the sun. They are designed to process a brilliant, chaotic flood of light, to distinguish a staggering spectrum of colors, and to see for miles across an open plain. They are, in essence, the jewels of the surface world. But, in a world lit by the soft glow of phosphorescent fungi and the dim warmth of geothermal vents, our sun-facing eyes would be overwhelmed, like using a telescope to read a book. So, evolution would get to work, and it could follow two beautiful divergent paths. On the one hand, our eyes might become incredibly specialized. Imagine them growing larger, the pupils permanently wide to drink in every possible photon of light. The sensitive light-detecting cells in our retinas, the rods, would multiply, while the color-detecting cones would diminish. We would become creatures of the twilight. Our vision would be less about the vibrant reds and blues of the surface, and more about discerning subtle shapes in the monochrome dimness. Think of the enormous, captivating eyes of a deep-sea squid or an owl. They aren't designed for brightness. They are masterpieces of low-light gathering. Our descendants' eyes could be just like that, huge, dark, and exquisitely sensitive to the faintest glimmer. But there's another path, a more radical one. What if, over time, the other senses became so dominant, so much more useful, that vision just wasn't worth the biological energy anymore? It's not as strange as it sounds. We see it in nature all the time. The cavefish that lives in total darkness has no eyes at all, just shallow, skin-covered depressions where they used to be. Its world is one of vibration, pressure, and chemistry. It doesn't need to see. For our subterranean humans, this could mean their eyes would slowly become vestigial. They might still be there, but small, sealed, and useless. A biological memory of a sun they've never felt. It's a startling image, but it is a powerful reminder that nature doesn't have sentimental attachments. If a tool is no longer needed, it is put back in the box, and a new, more appropriate tool is honed to perfection. So you see, it is not about going blind in a negative sense. It is about graduating to a different way of perceiving reality. And what a reality that would be. If vision takes a step back, then other senses would rush in to fill the space, becoming heightened to a degree we can barely imagine. Chief among them would be hearing. In the vast, echoing silence of the deep earth, sound would be everything. The gentle dripping of water wouldn't just be a background noise. It would be a landmark, a way of mapping the world. The whisper of air, moving through a newly opened fissure, would be a weather report. It is very likely they would develop a form of echolocation. It sounds like a superpower, but it is just biology. Bats and dolphins have been doing it for millions of years. You produce a sound, a click, a hum, a vocalization, and you listen with incredible precision to the echoes that bounce back. From those echoes you build a three-dimensional map of the world in your mind. You wouldn't see the cavern, you would hear its shape, its size, its texture. You would know exactly where a pillar of rock stands, how far away a wall is, and whether a tunnel ahead is a dead end or a vast new opening. This isn't just about avoiding bumping into things. It would be their primary way of interacting with their world. A friend's voice wouldn't just carry words. Its echo would tell you their exact location and distance. The sound of their own footsteps would be a constant stream of navigational data. Their world would be a symphony of echoes, and they would be the conductors, understanding its every nuance. It is a sense we have in a very rudimentary form. You can tell if you are in a small room or a large hall just by the sound of your own voice, but for them it would be as rich and detailed as our sight. And hand in hand with hearing comes the sense of touch, or more precisely, the sense of vibration. The ground beneath our feet is something we mostly ignore, a stable platform for our lives. For them, the ground would be a source of constant information. It would be a living membrane, telegraphing events across huge distances. Think of a spider sitting in the center of its web. It knows the instant a tiny fly touches the outermost strand, because the vibration travels through the silk. A subterranean human could be like that. They might be able to feel the subtle tremor of a distant rockfall, the rhythmic pulse of a geothermal vent, or even the footsteps of another person in an adjoining tunnel, long before they could hear them. Their feet, their hands, their entire bodies would become instruments for reading the deep, slow pulse of the planet. It's a form of perception that is profoundly intimate and connected. They wouldn't just be living in the earth. They would be in a constant, tactile conversation with it. So you have a human who perhaps cannot see the sky, but can hear the shape of a cavern and feel the heartbeat of the rock. What else changes? Well, look at your own skin. The color of our skin, in all its beautiful diversity, is a direct response to the sun. Melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color, is our body's natural sunblock, developed to protect us from harmful ultraviolet radiation. It's a brilliant surface world adaptation. But what happens when you take the sun away? Completely. For hundreds of generations, the evolutionary pressure to produce melanin would simply vanish. There's no UV radiation to protect against. So, over millennia, their skin would likely become very, very pale. The melanin would fade from their genetic code because it is an unnecessary energy expense. You'd see skin that is almost translucent, perhaps with the blue of veins visible beneath. It would be the color of the pale cave mushrooms they might cultivate, or the white limestone of the walls around them. It is, once again, the environment writing itself onto the body. A perfect, functional camouflage for a world without harsh light. This isn't a judgment of beauty, of course. Their standards of beauty would be entirely different, perhaps based on the resonance of one's voice, the grace of movement in the dark, or the warmth of one's touch. The appearance of their skin would be as normal and natural to them as the color of our own is to us. All these changes, the eyes, the ears, the skin, are adaptations to the external world. But what about the inner world? Our own bodies run on a very distinct clock, a circadian rhythm tied directly to the 24-hour cycle of light and dark created by our spinning planet. The rising sun triggers hormones that wake us up, and the coming of darkness prepares us for sleep. Our whole biology is a dance choreographed by the sun. So what happens to the dance when the choreographer leaves? The internal body clock wouldn't just disappear. It's too fundamental. But it would have to find a new rhythm, a new beat to follow. Perhaps their cycle would be longer or shorter. Maybe it would sync up, not with light, but with the subtle rhythmic changes in the subterranean environment. It could be a slow 30-hour cycle tied to the faint gravitational pull of the moon, which subtly flexes the planet's crust. Or it could be linked to the periodic pulsing of a geothermal vent, which changes the temperature and air pressure on a regular schedule. It is also possible their rhythms would become more social than environmental. The day might begin when the community starts to stir, their collective activity creating a rhythm of sound and heat that signals it is time to be awake. And the night would be a period of collective quiet. Their sense of time would be unmoored from the cosmos and anchored instead to the geology of their home and the biology of their own people. They would be living on Earth time, not sun time. When you put all these pieces together, a fascinating picture begins to form. You have a human who is paler, more delicate in some ways, but with senses honed to a razor's edge we cannot fathom. Their large, sensitive eyes, or the smooth skin where eyes used to be. Their ears, capable of navigating complex spaces through sound alone. Their skin, not just a covering, but a sensory organ for feeling the planet's vibrations. Their bodies, humming along to a rhythm that has nothing to do with sunrise or sunset. The central analogy holds true. Just as nature edits a fish for the crushing pressures of the deep sea or a mole for a life of burrowing, it would edit us for the deep, quiet dark. Every single change, no matter how strange it seems to us, would be a logical, elegant solution to the challenges and opportunities of their world. They wouldn't be monsters or aliens. They would be us. They would be Homo sapiens, but a different edition. A version of humanity that read a different chapter of the planet's story and adapted to it perfectly. A body shaped not by the endless sky and the burning sun, but by the quiet, eternal embrace of the earth itself. And that raises the next, perhaps even more profound, question. If you change the body this much, if you alter the very senses through which a person experiences reality, what does that do to the mind that lives? And that raises the next, perhaps even more profound, question. If you change the body this much, if you alter the very senses through which a person experiences reality, what does that do to the mind that lives inside it? The answer, I think, is that it changes everything. Absolutely everything. The architecture of their thoughts, the foundation of their fears, their very definition of what it means to be safe or to be alone. To understand this civilization, we have to do more than imagine their cities of stone. We have to try and imagine the mind that was born in the cavern. Let's start with our own psychology. For us, on the surface, there are certain anxieties that we see as disorders, as deviations from the norm. Think about agoraphobia. It's an anxiety disorder characterized by a fear of situations where escape might be difficult, often leading people to avoid vast open areas like fields, bridges, or large squares. For us, it's an affliction. For a civilization that grew up underground, it might be the default state of a healthy mind. It might simply be their version of common sense. Imagine your entire existence, and that of your ancestors for thousands of years, has been defined by the comforting, predictable presence of a ceiling. The rock above isn't a limitation, it is a shield. It is your protector from a chaotic, unknown realm you may not even have a name for. The world has always had a shape, a boundary. The tunnels and caverns are your home, your country, your entire universe. Now, picture being brought to the surface. You step out of a cave mouth not into a beautiful landscape, but into a terrifying, undefined emptiness. There's no ceiling. Nothing. Just a crushing, infinite void stretching out in all directions. The light is blinding. The air moves in unpredictable, violent ways we call wind. There's nothing to orient yourself against. It would feel like being thrown into the middle of the deepest ocean, with no land in sight. This wouldn't be a simple fear. It would be a profound, primal, existential terror. The open sky, which for us is a symbol of freedom, of limitless possibility, would be for them the very definition of madness. A place with no structure, no safety, no up or down that makes sense. Their poets wouldn't write about the beauty of a wide-open plain, they'd write horror stories about it. So you see, for them, a deep-seated fear of open spaces wouldn't be a disorder. It would be sanity. It would be the natural, logical response of a mind that equates walls with life, and the absence of walls with oblivion. And if a fear of the open is the norm, then what about its opposite? What about claustrophobia, the fear of enclosed spaces? It's a concept that might not even exist in their language. It would be like trying to explain the fear of water to a fish. How can you be afraid of the very thing that gives you life and safety? For you and me, a tight space can feel constricting, suffocating. We have an instinctive understanding of being trapped. But for them, the gentle pressure of the rock all around would be the ultimate comfort. A narrow tunnel isn't a trap, it is a secure pathway. A small enclosed cavern isn't a prison, it is a cozy, safe room. The feeling of solid earth at your back, over your head, and beneath your feet is the baseline state of existence. It is the universe giving you a constant, gentle hug. Think about the difference between someone who grew up in the heart of a dense, bustling city like Tokyo and someone who grew up on a remote farm in the middle of vast, empty plains. The city dweller might feel a sense of energy, community, and safety among the towering buildings and crowded streets. To them, the silence and emptiness of the plains might feel lonely, exposed, and unsettling. The person from the farm might see the city as a chaotic, stressful, and confining cage, while the open land feels like freedom and peace. Neither of them is wrong. Their fundamental feelings about space, about crowds, and about solitude have been shaped by the world they know. Now, amplify that difference by 1,000 times. That's the psychological gap we're talking about here. A society where the embrace of the earth is the ultimate good. The idea of being afraid of that embrace would be completely alien, a sign of a mind that had somehow become disconnected from the very nature of reality. It would be a true madness. This fundamental difference in spatial perception would ripple out into every aspect of their social lives. Take the concept of privacy, for instance. For us, privacy is almost always physical. It's a closed door. It's a high fence. It's being in a room by yourself. We create physical barriers to separate our individual world from the collective one. But in a world of interconnected tunnels and vast, shared caverns, where the sound of your neighbor might be a constant presence carried through the rock, physical privacy might be an impossible luxury. So, how would they adapt? It is likely that privacy for them would have to evolve into something else entirely. It would become a mental and social construct, rather than a physical one. Perhaps privacy would be a form of discipline, a shared social agreement. It could be the simple act of diverting your attention. You might learn from childhood to not listen to the sounds from the next cavern, to not register the vibrations of a family's argument. Privacy would be a right you grant to others by consciously ignoring them. It would be a collective meditation, a silent understanding that says, I am here and you are there, and though no wall separates us, I will create one in my mind out of respect. It might also be expressed through sound. In a world where light is scarce, sound is everything. Perhaps they would have specific acoustic signals, a low hum or a gentle rhythmic tap that signifies a desire for solitude. It is a do not disturb sign made of sound waves. In this society, a loud or intrusive person wouldn't just be considered rude. They would be seen as a violator of the most sacred social contract, someone who shatters the delicate mental walls that allow everyone to coexist. The idea of being alone wouldn't mean being physically separate, but rather being socially and sensorially left in peace. And all of these psychological shifts, brings us to the biggest question of all. The one that would define their mythology, their spirituality, and their deepest anxieties. The psychological weight of a single word, up. For us, up is almost universally positive. We look up to the heavens. We strive to move up in the world. We associate up with progress, with divinity, with hope. It's where the sun is, where the stars are. It is the direction of aspiration. For a mind born in the cavern, up would be loaded with a terrifying and complex weight. It would be, first and foremost, the direction of the unknown. It is the place where the rock thins, where the world becomes less solid, less reliable. The deepest parts of their world, the coreward direction, would be the foundation of reality, stable, warm, and predictable. Down would be the direction of safety and truth. Up, conversely, would be the direction of fragility, of danger, of nothingness. Imagine their ghost stories. Their monsters wouldn't come from the deeps, they'd seep down from the porous, weak rock above. The cautionary tales told to children wouldn't be about getting lost in the dark, but about climbing too high, about getting too close to the thin ceiling where the world could break. Over millennia, this primal fear would almost certainly blossom into a rich and powerful mythology. The surface world, our world, would become their underworld. It would be their version of Hades or hell, but inverted. A place of legend, a terrifying paradise, or a chaotic inferno. Stories would be told of a realm of unbearable light, where the air itself is a constant, screaming hurricane. A place where the ground is treacherously soft, and the ceiling is a horrifying, infinite void that can swallow your soul. Beings from this upper world would be their demons and their angels. Perhaps they would imagine strange, pale creatures who are born, live and die in a single cycle of the burning light, their lives impossibly short and frantic. The surface wouldn't be a physical place one could visit. It would be a spiritual concept, a philosophical warning. It would be the ultimate symbol of chaos, a reminder of why their ancestors wisely chose the stability and permanence of the deep earth. Their entire spiritual compass would be inverted. Their ads wouldn't live in the heavens above, but in the geothermal heart of the planet below. Pilgrimages would be made downwards, not upwards, seeking wisdom and connection by getting closer to the warm, living core of their world. Salvation wouldn't be about ascending to a higher plane, but about achieving a state of harmony with the deep, resonant reality of the planet itself. To them, our endless striving to climb, to build taller, to reach for the stars, would look like a form of collective insanity. A civilization utterly obsessed with the direction of its greatest peril. They would see us as children playing on the thinnest patch of ice over a freezing lake, completely unaware of the danger, mistaking fragility for freedom. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? That our entire concept of progress could be, from another perspective, a race towards oblivion. The mind in the cavern, shaped by darkness and stone, would see the universe not as something to be conquered, but as something to be safely nestled within. And that may be the most profound difference of all. The mind in the cavern, shaped by darkness and stone, would see the universe not as something to be conquered, but as something to be safely nestled within. And that may be the most profound difference of all. It is a fascinating thought, isn't it? Trying to imagine a mind so different from our own. And in a way, we've been trying to do just that for a very, very long time. Long before we started this thought experiment together, humanity has been exploring this idea, not with drills and seismographs, but with ink and imagination. We've been telling ourselves stories about what lies beneath our feet, and those stories, well, they tell us a lot more about ourselves than they do about any hidden world. Our fictions about the subterranean are like a mirror, reflecting the hopes and fears of whatever era is looking into it. The idea of an underground world is a constant, but the face looking back at us is always changing. It is a journey that shows just how much our perspective on the unknown has evolved. Let's travel back for a moment to the 19th century. It was an age of steam, steel, and boundless optimism. We were mapping the continents, charting the seas, and looking to the skies with new powerful telescopes. The world felt like a great, grand puzzle, and we believed we had the intelligence and the spirit to solve every piece. And it was in this environment of thrilling discovery that a story like Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth could be born. For Verne, the world beneath our feet wasn't a place of horror or dread. It was an adventure. It was the last, truly unexplored frontier. His underground world is a place of wonders, vast, sparkling caverns, seas lit by glowing gases, prehistoric creatures still roaming in the warmth of the planet's core. It is a natural museum filled with secrets and beauty, waiting for brave explorers to come and witness it. There's a profound sense of optimism in that story. It suggests that no matter where we look, even in the deepest, darkest places, we'll find more to be amazed by, more to learn from. The feeling of that book is one of pure, almost childlike wonder. It's the ultimate field trip. It treats the Earth not as a solid, boring ball of rock, but as a kind of geological treasure chest, and all we need is the courage to find the key and open the lid. Verne's story is a perfect reflection of his time, an era that believed progress was good, that exploration was a noble calling, and that the universe, in its entirety, was ultimately knowable and magnificent. There was nothing to fear from the dark, because the light of human knowledge could illuminate anything. But as the century wore on, that bright, unwavering optimism began to show some cracks. The Industrial Revolution, which had promised so much, was creating sprawling, smog-choked cities and a vast, impoverished working class. People were starting to wonder about the dark side of progress. They were starting to fear what humanity was becoming. And so, the story of the underground changed. It went from a place of wonder to a place of warning. This is where H.G. Wells enters the picture with his book, The Time Machine. His vision of the future is not a united humanity exploring the stars, but one that has fractured, that has degenerated. And where did half of that fractured humanity go? They went underground. The Morlocks in Wells' story are nothing like Verne's majestic prehistoric beasts. They are pale, ape-like creatures of the dark. They are the descendants of the industrial working class, driven underground for so long that they become something other than human. They tend to ancient machines in the darkness, and they fear the light. And in the story's most chilling revelation, They prey upon the beautiful, gentle, surface-dwelling Eloi, who are the descendants of the idle upper class. It is a terrifying and powerful image. Wells took the idea of an underground world and turned it into a grim social commentary. The underground was no longer a natural wonder to be explored. It was a societal basement where we had thrown away a part of ourselves. The darkness below wasn't the darkness of the unknown planet. It was the darkness within our own society, a consequence of our own divisions and injustices. Do you feel that shift? It's a profound one. It's the difference between an exciting dream of discovery and a deeply unsettling nightmare about our own future. If Verne's story reflects the hope of the 19th century, Wells' story reflects its anxieties. He projected our fears about class, industry, and evolution down into the earth, and in doing so, he cemented a new vision of the subterranean in our collective imagination, a place where humanity's worst impulses and its worst creations could fester in the dark. The underground became a place to hide our monsters, especially the ones we had created ourselves. That darker vision, that idea of the underground as a place of consequence, became incredibly powerful. And it continued to evolve as our fears evolved. The anxieties of the Industrial Revolution eventually gave way to an even greater, more all-consuming fear, the fear of total annihilation. The 20th century gave us the atomic bomb, and with it, the very real possibility that we could scour the surface of our own planet clean of all life. Suddenly, living underground wasn't a choice, an adventure, or a slow social process. It was a necessity. It was the only option left after the end of the world. And this is the vision that has dominated our more recent stories, especially in the world of video games. Think of franchises like Fallout or Metro 2033. In these worlds, humanity has been driven underground by nuclear war. The surface is a poisoned, irradiated wasteland, and the last remnants of civilization huddle in underground vaults or repurposed subway tunnels. Here, the underground is neither a wondrous frontier nor a monstrous habitat. It is a bunker. It is a refuge born of absolute failure. Life in these worlds is not about exploration or social order. It is about survival. It is about scraping by, recycling old-world technology, and defending your small patch of light from the mutated creatures that now stalk the darkness. And what's truly telling is that in these stories, the ultimate dream is almost always the same, to one day return to the surface. The sky, the sun, the open air, these become the stuff of legend, the mythical paradise that everyone longs for. This represents another huge shift in the story we tell ourselves. The underground is no longer a separate, alien world. It is our world, just crammed into a basement. It's a prison we built for ourselves out of fear and failure. These stories reflect the anxieties of a post-Cold War world, a world that lives with the constant, low-level knowledge that we possess the ability to destroy ourselves completely. The underground in these fictions isn't a what-if, it is a what happens next. It is the direct consequence of our actions on the surface. So, you see the pattern? It's like a classic song that every generation re-records. The melody stays the same, people living underground, but the style, the instruments, the feeling of it all changes to match the spirit of the times. Jules Verne gave us a version full of orchestral wonder and the thrill of discovery, a perfect anthem for an age of exploration. He looked down and saw potential. H.G. Wells re-recorded the tune as a dark industrial dirge, a cautionary tale for an era grappling with the social cost of its own progress. He looked down and saw the consequences of our own division. And today, our modern storytellers have given us a post-apocalyptic remix. It's a gritty, desperate song of survival, a reflection of our fears about environmental collapse and self-destruction. We look down and see a shelter from a storm of our own making. Each story is a snapshot of the world that created it. The adventure, the warning, the last resort. These narratives show that the idea of a subterranean world is a powerful, flexible vessel for our collective imagination. We fill that dark, empty space beneath our feet with whatever is most on our minds. We furnish it with our greatest hopes for what we might discover, or we populate it with our deepest fears for what we might become. And that's why these stories are so important to our thought experiment. They remind us that this idea isn't just a flight of fancy. It is a fundamental part of our cultural DNA, a question we've been asking ourselves in different ways for generations. We've always been fascinated by that feeling of the ground beneath our feet, by the possibility of a world hidden from the sun. Our fiction is simply the echo of that enduring, universal curiosity. It's the way we explore the cavern without ever leaving the comfort of our own home. Our fiction is simply the echo of that enduring, universal curiosity. It's the way we explore the cavern without ever leaving the comfort of our own home. But that exploration does something fascinating. It doesn't just let us imagine another world. It forces us to see our own in a completely new light. Once we've spent time in that quiet, sunless world of our thought experiment, we can't help but look around our own and notice, maybe for the first time, the things that are so fundamental we've forgotten they are even there. So, for a moment, let's do that. Let's step out of the hypothetical cavern and stand on the surface together. Let's try to see our world through their eyes. The first thing that would strike you, the thing that would be completely overwhelming, wouldn't be a sound or a smell. It would be the simple act of looking up. For your entire life, for all of your ancestors' lives, up has meant a solid ceiling. Rock, maybe vined with crystal, perhaps arching into a grand dome, but always a definite, tangible end. But here, up doesn't end. Imagine trying to process a sky. There's no ceiling. It just keeps going. And it's not a neutral color. It's a brilliant, impossible blue. A color you've maybe only ever seen in the rarest of crystals. But here it is, stretched out into infinity. And it's not empty. White, fluffy things, clouds, drift across it, constantly changing their shape. No two moments are ever the same. For a subterranean culture, the sky might be the most beautiful and terrifying thing they could ever witness. It would be like looking into the face of infinity itself. Our concept of heaven, of divinity, of aspiration, it is so often tied to that limitless space above us. Theirs would be rooted in the safety of the stone around them. We look up for hope. They would look around for comfort. And then you'd feel it on your skin. A breeze. How do you even begin to explain a breeze? In their world, air moves, of course. It circulates through vents, pushed by geothermal convection. It's a predictable, engineered system. But a breeze, that's different. It's the planet breathing, a wild and unpredictable caress. It's gentle one moment, a playful gust the next. It carries scents with it, of damp earth, of distant flowers, of the sea. It is a constant, gentle reminder that you aren't in a closed system. You are part of an open, living, breathing world. That feeling of a cool breeze on a warm day is a simple pleasure we barely register, but to them, it would be a form of magic. Then comes the rain. Underground, water is a utility. It comes from an aquifer, a well, a pipe. It is controlled, precious, and silent. But on the surface, water just falls from the sky. Imagine the shock of that. The sound of it, a soft patter on leaves that grows into a roar. The smell it kicks up from the dry ground, that scent we call petrichor. The feeling of it on your face. We run from the rain, we complain about it, we hide from it under umbrellas. But for a person of the deep earth, it would be an absolute miracle. A world that weeps and cleanses itself, that gives life so freely from above. It is an act of grace so common we've learned to find it inconvenient. Their entire existence is built on the careful management of a finite water supply. Ours is built on the assumption that, sooner or later, it will always fall from the sky again. These little things, the sky, the breeze, the rain, are just the daily details. The truly profound difference is the rhythm of it all. Their world would be one of incredible stability. The temperature managed by geothermal heat would be constant. The light from bioluminescent life would be constant. The environment would be, in a word, predictable. Our world is defined by its cycles. It is a story told in chapters. We call them seasons. Imagine trying to explain the concept of autumn. You'd have to start by explaining trees, these massive, strange life forms that reach for the sky. Then you'd have to explain that, for one part of the year, these trees set themselves on fire with color, red, gold, orange, before letting all their leaves die and fall to the ground, leaving them like skeletons. Then you'd have to explain winter, a time when the world goes to sleep under a blanket of white, cold powder that falls from the sky like rain. And then spring, a great rebirth, when everything that seemed dead comes back to life in a riot of green and new color. This cycle of death and rebirth isn't just a pretty backdrop to our lives. It is woven into our psychology, our religions, our stories. It gives us a sense of time, of progress, of hope. It teaches us that things end, but that endings are often the prelude to new beginnings. A subterranean world, in its beautiful timeless constancy, would have no such metaphor written into the fabric of its existence. It would be a culture without the poetry of the seasons. And the engine driving all of this, the great conductor of this entire planetary orchestra, is the sun. We've talked about their technology, about harnessing geothermal energy. But our entire civilization is, in the most literal sense, solar-powered. Every blade of grass, every apple on a tree, every grain of wheat is a little machine for eating sunlight. Photosynthesis is the foundation of almost all life on this planet's surface. Our whole agricultural system is just the act of arranging plants to catch the light from a star that's 93 million miles away. This relationship with the sun dictates our lives in ways we don't even think about. The slow turning of the earth gives us the most fundamental rhythm we know. The day is for work, for activity, for light. The night is for rest, for quiet, for darkness. This rhythm is our planet's heartbeat, and we are all attuned to it. Our bodies know it. Our societies are built around it. The 9-to-5 workday, the school bell, the evening meal. It is all a dance choreographed by the rising and setting of the sun. Our entire calendar, our holidays, our festivals, they are markers of our planet's journey around that star. We celebrate the solstices, the longest and shortest days. We plant in the spring and harvest in the fall. Our social lives are a reflection of the celestial clock. For a civilization underground, time would be a human invention, a convention measured by precise instruments. For us, time is a tangible experience, painted across the sky each and every day. So you can see, their world is built on the predictable, constant heat of the Earth's core. Our world is built on the dynamic, cyclical, life-giving energy of a distant star. It is a profound difference that shapes everything. And finally, there's the question of space itself, of movement. In a subterranean world, you move through tunnels, corridors, and caverns. You might go up and down through massive vertical shafts. It is a complex, three-dimensional maze. But it is always, by definition, enclosed. Your path is dictated by the tunnels that have been dug or discovered. On the surface, we largely live on a two-dimensional plane. But that plane stretches out to a concept that would be completely alien to them, the horizon. Stand on a beach or in a wide open field and look into the distance. You can see the line where the earth meets the sky. And the incredible thing about that line is that you can walk towards it for hours or days or weeks. The very idea of the horizon is a promise of endless possibility. It is what has driven our own explorers to cross oceans and continents. The idea there is always something over there. It represents a kind of freedom that is fundamentally spatial. For a person born in a cavern, the idea of an unenclosed space, a space with no walls and no ceiling, might not feel like freedom. It might feel like a terrifying vulnerability. It would be the ultimate form of exposure. This goes back to our discussion of psychology. Our agoraphobia could be their societal norm. Their feeling of safety in the enclosure could be our claustrophobia. It is like trying to explain color to someone who can only see in black and white. You can talk about wavelengths and frequencies. You can describe red as warm and blue as cool, but you can never truly convey the raw experience of seeing a sunset. The concepts are just too different. The fundamental inputs of our reality are absent from theirs. We take the spectrum of daily life for granted. The sunrise, the clouds, the changing of the leaves, the feeling of a breeze. But their absence would define an entire existence. Thinking about their world isn't really about them at all. It is a mirror. It reminds us that the mundane things in our lives aren't mundane at all. They are gifts of living on the surface of a planet, cradled in a thin layer of air, under the light of a friendly star. The simple, overlooked act of turning your face towards the sun and feeling its warmth is a profound piece of our human story, a story that might have been written in an entirely different language. They are gifts of living on the surface of a planet, cradled in a thin layer of air, under the light of a friendly star. The simple, overlooked act of turning your face towards the sun and feeling its warmth is a profound piece of our human story, a story that might have been written in an entirely different language. And yet, while we spend so much of our time looking up, wondering about the stars and the vastness of space, our thought experiment asks us to consider a different direction. It asks us to look down. What if the most significant forces shaping our world, the true prime movers of our planet's story, aren't coming from the sky at all, but from deep within the earth, completely unseen? This brings us to a fascinating and slightly dizzying idea, the concept of a world of unseen causes. In our daily lives, we are accustomed to a simple chain of cause and effect. You see the lightning, you hear the thunder. You see the wind blow, you see the trees sway. We trust our senses to report the reality of what's happening. But imagine a civilization whose very existence is a cause, and our world, our surface world, is where the effects ripple out, often in ways we cannot explain. It's a bit like living in an apartment and occasionally hearing a strange muffled thud from the floor below. You do not know what it was. You do not know who lives there or what they are doing. All you know is the effect, that sudden, inexplicable sound. You might ignore it, or you might build a story around it. But you cannot know the cause. Now, scale that idea up to the size of a planet. Imagine our entire surface world as that apartment, and this deep civilization as the mysterious neighbor downstairs. We feel the vibrations, but we have absolutely no idea what's causing them. Let's think about this in concrete terms. Geologists and seismologists are some of the most brilliant detectives on the planet. They study the movement of tectonic plates, the flow of magma, the immense pressures that build and release within the Earth's crust. But even they encounter mysteries. There are seismic events that do not quite fit the models. Deep focus earthquakes that originate so far down They defy easy explanation. Strange, localized fluctuations in the planet's magnetic field that appear and disappear without a clear geological reason. We, as surface dwellers, do our best to find a surface-level explanation. We call them anomalies, geological quirks, or data that needs more study. But in our thought experiment, these aren't quirks at all. They are evidence. They are noise. What if that strange seismic signature that puzzles scientists in Antarctica is simply the byproduct of a massive excavation project? The hollowing out of a new cavern city, a project that might take 1,000 of our years to complete. To them, it is just industry, it is just progress. To us, on the surface, it's a baffling shiver in the rock, a ghost in the machine of our planet. Think about the construction of a subway system in a major city. If you live or work above it, you might feel the occasional rumble. You might hear a low hum. If you didn't know a subway was being built, you'd be mystified. You might even be a little scared. You'd be experiencing the effects of a vast, complex, and purposeful operation, but without any context, it is just random, unsettling noise. The engineering projects of a civilization that has existed for millennia would be on a scale we can barely comprehend. The subtle, planetary effects of their work could be something we've been measuring for centuries without ever knowing we were listening to the echo of their existence. This flips our entire perspective on its head. We see ourselves as the sole actors on this planet's stage. But what if we are just the audience, watching a play where the main characters are all hidden backstage? Their actions could define the very ground we walk on, and we would be none the wiser. We'd simply call it geology. But this idea doesn't have to be purely accidental or disruptive. Let's explore a more profound, more elegant possibility. What if this civilization wasn't just living in the earth, but was actively working within it? What if they were its caretakers, its stewards? On the surface, we live in fear of certain planetary forces. We track the pressure building in supervolcanoes like Yellowstone. We know that a large enough eruption could plunge our own civilization into a dark age. It is an immense and terrifying power that we are utterly helpless to control. We can only watch and wait and worry. But what if this subterranean civilization wasn't helpless? What if their advanced understanding of geophysics and planetary dynamics allowed them to manage these systems? Imagine them as the planet's engineers, working in the great engine room of the world. They might build vast channels to carefully vent geothermal pressure, releasing it slowly and safely over centuries, instead of letting it build to a single cataclysmic explosion. They could be planetary plumbers, maintaining the very core of our world. From this perspective, their actions are essential for the stability of the entire planet, including our life on the surface. And the irony is breathtaking. We might detect a series of small, strange tremors around a volcanic caldera and report it as a sign of increasing danger. We'd panic. But in this scenario, that tremor wouldn't be a warning of impending doom. It would be the opposite. It would be the sound of a safety valve being expertly turned. It would be the sound of a catastrophe being prevented. They would be the unseen guardians of the world, whose quiet, constant work allows us the luxury of our blue skies and stable ground. Their greatest contribution to the planet would be something we could never, ever thank them for, because we would never even know it was happening. Their footprint isn't a careless thump on the floor. It is the steady, reliable hum of a system working perfectly, a system we do not even know we are a part of. This idea of a hidden cause creating a visible effect also gives us a completely new way to look at our own history, specifically our myth. For thousands of years, cultures all over the world, with no contact with one another, have told stories about beings of the earth. Think of the dwarves of Norse mythology, master blacksmiths and craftspeople who live inside mountains, guarding treasures and secrets. Think of the gnomes of European folklore, wise, ancient beings who understand the language of the earth itself, or the kobolds of German mines. In these stories, the beings are often described as small, sturdy, and perfectly adapted to a life in the dark. They are of the rock. We have always called these myths legends, and fantastical stories our ancestors told to explain the unexplainable, the strange echoes in a mine, the glint of a crystal in a dark cave, the unsettling feeling of being deep underground. But what if we've had it backwards the whole time? What if these myths aren't the fantasy, but are in fact the fragmented, distorted, and deeply human record of a genuine encounter? What if, thousands of years ago, a surface human, a miner, an explorer, a lost child, stumbled upon an entrance to their world? What if they had a fleeting glimpse of one of these beings, or perhaps found a tool of theirs, an object of such strange and perfect craftsmanship that it seemed magical? They wouldn't have the language or the concepts to describe what they had seen. They couldn't say, "I saw a member of a subterranean hominid species whose technology is millennia ahead of ours." Instead, they would do what humans have always done. They would create a story. They would describe a dwarf or a gnome. They would explain the advanced technology as magic. The story would be told and retold, morphing and changing over generations, until it became a simple fairy tale we tell our children. In this view, our myths are not pure invention. They are a kind of cultural fossil record. They are the effect, and the existence of this hidden civilization is the ultimate cause. Our legends are simply the blurry, half-remembered photograph of a reality too strange for our ancestors to comprehend. It's a powerful thought. It suggests that the answers to some of our oldest cultural questions might not lie in analyzing the stories themselves, but in imagining the reality that could have inspired them in the first place. This entire line of thinking leads to a deep and humbling meditation on our own perception. It forces us to confront the possibility that the most profound actions shaping our world, the most important events in our planet's history, could be completely and permanently invisible to us. There's a beautiful analogy for this in our own known world. The deep, unseen currents of the ocean. Far below the surface, great rivers of cold and warm water flow silently in the dark. They are immensely powerful. These currents dictate the weather patterns across the entire globe. They determine where rain falls, where deserts form, where hurricanes are born. A farmer in the middle of a continent, watching the clouds, has their entire livelihood dictated by a force they will never see, thousands of miles away and thousands of feet deep. Their daily reality is the effect. The deep ocean current is the unseen cause. Our hypothetical subterranean civilization is this principle taken to its ultimate conclusion. They are the deep current of humanity. Their existence provides a potential cause for so many of our world's unexplained effects, from geological anomalies to our most ancient myths. It suggests that reality is layered and that we only have access to the very top layer. We are living in a world of unseen causes, where the story of our planet may have a narrator we've never heard, and its most important characters may be ones we've never ever seen. It's a perspective that encourages a certain kind of calm, a certain kind of humility. It reminds us that what we see is not all there is. That beneath the familiar surface of our world, there could be forces at play, purposes unfolding, and a whole different story being written in the heart of the earth. And if that's true, if their society has been functioning and thriving for eons without us, it begs another question. What would a society like that consider to be progress? What would advancement even mean to a people who could not expand outwards, but only inwards? Gentle, thoughtful music fades slightly, and continues underneath the narration. What would a society like that consider to be progress? What would advancement even mean to a people who could not expand outwards, but only inwards? This question, I think, gets to the very heart of our thought experiment. Because when you strip away the ability to grow bigger, you are forced to completely rethink what it means to get better. For us, on the surface, the idea of progress has almost always been synonymous with expansion. It's written into our history, our language, our very psychology. Our story is one of horizons. From the moment our distant ancestors first walked out onto the savannah, the driving question has been, what's over that next hill? That simple question propelled us across continents and over oceans. It built ships to chart the unknown, and it eventually built rockets to reach for the moon and the stars. Our heroes are explorers, pioneers, astronauts, people who went wide. Think about how we measure the success of our own societies. We talk about economic growth, gross domestic product. We measure the size of our cities, the height of our buildings, the speed of our travel. We celebrate the company that opens a new market, the nation that claims new territory, the science that unlocks a new frontier. Our entire model is based on a simple, unspoken assumption that more is better, that growth is good. Our civilization is like a magnificent tree, constantly pushing its branches higher into the sky and its roots wider through the earth. Its entire purpose, its very definition of life, is to get bigger, to occupy more space, to draw in more resources. And for thousands of years, that model has served us. But what happens when there's no more space to grow into? What happens when your world is not an open plain, but a closed system? For a civilization born in the deep earth, the concept of endless expansion would be completely alien. They couldn't push their borders outwards. Their world, vast as it might be, would have a final definite edge. A point where the rock becomes too dense, the heat too intense, or the resources too thin. So, their idea of progress couldn't be outward. It would have to turn inward. Imagine that, for a moment. Instead of a society obsessed with what's new and what's next, you'd have a society dedicated to perfecting what is. Their journey wouldn't be one of discovery, but of refinement. Progress wouldn't be about building a bigger city. It would be about making the existing city a more perfect place to live. Not with more buildings, but with better systems. Imagine their greatest minds, their most brilliant engineers, spending their entire lives not on inventing faster ways to travel, but on perfecting a closed-loop water recycling system, making it just 1% more efficient. To us, that might sound tedious. To them, it could be the highest calling, a sacred duty to the whole. Their progress would be measured in equilibrium, in stability. The ultimate achievement for them wouldn't be conquering a new cavern, but creating a social and ecological system that could sustain itself in perfect harmony for 10,000 years. A society where the concept of waste simply doesn't exist, because every byproduct is a nutrient for another process. It is a completely different goal. We strive for momentum, they would strive for balance. Think of their science. Our science is often a tool for mastery. We study the atom to build power plants. We study genetics to increase crop yields. We seek to understand the world so we can change it to suit our needs. Their science would likely be one of stewardship. They wouldn't be trying to tame nature, they gere nature. Their geology wouldn't be about finding new things to mine, but about understanding the deep pulse of the planet they live within. Predicting seismic shifts not to exploit them, but to harmonize with them. Their biology would focus on the delicate web of life in their own ecosystem, the bioluminescent fungi, the cave-dwelling creatures, their own bodies, to ensure its health, not to bend it to their will. It would be a science of listening, not of shouting. And what about their art and philosophy? In a world without new landscapes to paint or new stars to chart, art wouldn't be about capturing a fleeting moment of novelty. It might become a generational pursuit of perfection. Imagine a song, a single beautiful melody, that isn't composed by one person, but is added to, refined, and polished by a family of musicians over 500 years. Each generation inherits the piece, seeking to perfect a single harmony or smooth a single transition before passing it on. The art isn't in the creation, but in the curation. In the patient, loving act of making something that is already beautiful, even more so. Their definition of advancement, you see, would be about depth, not breadth. It's the difference between a tree and a geode. The tree's progress is all external, visible in its growing size. But the geodo, from the outside, it looks like a simple, static rock. It doesn't appear to be doing anything. But its progress has been happening internally, over millennia, slowly forming a breathtakingly complex and beautiful crystalline structure. It doesn't get bigger, it just becomes more perfect inside. That would be their measure of a great society. Not how far it has spread, but how deeply it understands itself. Not how much it has built, but how well what it has built endures. Now, let's take this one step further. Let's turn the lens around. If this deep civilization, with its values of balance, stewardship, and internal perfection, were somehow able to observe us on the surface, what would they see? Imagine them looking up, in their own way, at our world. They would see a species in a state of constant, chaotic frenzy. They would see us tearing down forests to build cities that we then abandon a few centuries later. They would see us pulling resources from the ground, with no thought for how they will be replenished, creating mountains of discarded things we call trash. They would hear the noise of our engines, the clamor of our arguments, the constant shouting for more, more, more. They'd watch us fight brutal wars over patches of dirt, drawing lines on a map and declaring one side fundamentally different from the other. Our relentless drive for growth, the very thing we define as our greatest strength, might look to them like a terrifying, uncontrolled disease. A planetary fever. They, who had mastered the art of living within their means, would see us as a civilization that has never even learned the concept of enough. Our obsession with the individual, with making a name for oneself, with leaving a personal mark, might seem incredibly primitive. A sign of profound social immaturity. Their heroes wouldn't be conquerors, but caretakers. Not innovators, but preservers. The idea of a single person claiming ownership over a piece of the world would be as nonsensical as claiming to own a specific breath of air in a shared cavern. They wouldn't see our constant change as progress. They would see it as instability. They would see our disposable culture not as convenient, but as a kind of madness. A deep disrespect for the very materials that give us life. They would likely look upon us not with anger or jealousy, but with a kind of sad, gentle pity. They'd see us as a young species, blessed with a magnificent, sun-drenched playground, who has mistaken the frantic energy of childhood for the wisdom of adulthood. A species that has learned how to move fast, but has forgotten how to stand still. And this really brings the question home to us, doesn't it? Exploring this idea of a subterranean culture forces us to hold up a mirror to our own. It gently asks us to question our most basic assumptions. Is onward and upward really the only path for an intelligent species? Have we become so focused on the horizon that we've forgotten to look at the ground beneath our feet? Our story has been one of expansion. But as we begin to face the limits of our own planet, with its finite resources and fragile climate, perhaps this what-if scenario isn't just a fantasy. Perhaps it is a parable. It suggests that there is another way to be, another definition of a successful world, one based not on perpetual growth, but on perpetual grace. A progress measured not in miles, but in depth. A civilization that chose not to conquer the world, but to understand its place within it. It leaves you wondering, if we were to meet them, would we be the ones considered advanced? Or would we, with all our technology and all our ambition, be seen as the civilization that still has a lot of growing up to do? It leaves you wondering, if we were to meet them, would we be the ones considered advanced? Or would we, with all our technology and all our ambition, be seen as the civilization that still has a lot of growing up to do? So let's just sit with that for a moment. Let's imagine it. The day the worlds meet. After millennia of separate journeys, two versions of humanity, shaped by entirely different realities, finally become aware of each other. How does it happen? What does that first, incredible moment look like? Perhaps it's not a grand arrival. No ships descending from the heavens. Maybe it's an accident. An unexpected consequence of our own relentless curiosity. Imagine a deep earth drilling project, pushing further than ever before, searching for geothermal energy or rare minerals. The engineers watch their monitors as the drill bit chews through miles of solid rock. And then, suddenly, nothing. The pressure readings drop to zero. The drill has broken through into an open space. A space that shouldn't be there. The first contact isn't a greeting. It is a geological anomaly report. A confused email sent back to the head office. But what follows is a cascade of discovery that would change our world forever. Or maybe the choice isn't ours at all. Maybe they've known about us for a very, very long time. Listening to the rumbles of our cities, the shockwaves of our wars, the seismic hum of our industry. Perhaps they've been watching us the way a homeowner listens to strange noises in the attic, hoping the problem resolves itself. And maybe, one day, they decide the problem is getting worse. They decide that our activities on the surface are beginning to threaten the stability of the entire planet, their home. So, they reach out. Not with aggression, but with a kind of reluctant necessity. A message appears, not from the stars, but from the ground beneath our feet. Either way, the result is the same, the single greatest discovery in human history. We are not alone. And our neighbors have been here the whole time. But after the initial shock, after the sheer world-shaking awe of it all, the real challenges would begin. And they wouldn't be what you might expect from our science fiction stories. The first and most dangerous barrier wouldn't be about weapons or intentions. It would be biological. It would be about the very air we breathe. For hundreds of thousands of years, we've been evolving on the surface, building up a complex library of immunities to a whole world of viruses, bacteria, and microbes. Our bodies are a walking testament to every illness we've ever survived. Theirs would be the same, but for a completely different, sealed environment. We'd be walking biological wild cards to them, and they to us. Our common cold could be a civilization-ending plague for them. A simple fungus from their caverns, harmless to them, could be utterly alien and devastating to our immune systems. The history of contact on our own planet has taught us this lesson in the most tragic of ways. So that first meeting wouldn't be a handshake. It would be the most carefully managed quarantine in the history of life. Two species, separated by a sterile pane of glass, looking at their long-lost relatives, and realizing that the most dangerous thing they share is the simple act of being alive. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? That the greatest threat in first contact isn't malice, but biology. It is a reminder that we are all products of our environment, right down to the microscopic level. The very things that protect us in our own world could be what makes us a danger in another. And if we could somehow solve that immense biological puzzle, the next mountain to climb would be communication. This is so much deeper than just learning a new language. Words are easy. It is the concepts behind the words that would be the true challenge. How do you explain the color blue to a civilization that has never seen the sky? What word do you use for wind or rain? Think about how much of our language, our poetry, our art is built on metaphors of the natural world. A stormy relationship, a sunny disposition, reaching for the stars. These are the building blocks of how we express ourselves. Their language would be built on an entirely different foundation. Metaphors of resonance, pressure, stone, and flow. Of echoes and silence. It would be like an uncontacted tribe from the deepest Amazon jungle meeting a team of astronauts. Both are human, of course. Both feel love and fear and curiosity. But their entire understanding of the universe, their fundamental reference points for what is real and what is important, are so profoundly different that finding common ground would be the work of generations. How do we explain our fear of the dark to a people who have mastered it? How could they possibly explain their potential fear of open spaces to us, a species that craves horizons? We would have to start from the very beginning. With mathematics, perhaps? The universal language of physics. We'd have to build a new dictionary, a Rosetta Stone not for two languages, but for two realities. A dictionary of the sky and the stone. And the patience required for that, the empathy, would be unlike anything we've ever had to practice before. So, yes, the challenges would be immense. Perhaps even insurmountable. But the potential rewards, the possibility for learning, that is where the cautious optimism begins to shine through. Because this wouldn't just be a meeting of two cultures, it would be a meeting with a version of humanity that took a different path. A version of us that solved problems we are still struggling with. Think about it. We've talked about their closed-loop economy, their mastery of recycling where the very concept of waste doesn't exist. We struggle with landfills and ocean plastics. They might have solved that problem as a basic matter of survival centuries, or even millennia, ago. We could learn not just their techniques but the philosophy behind them, the deep, ingrained understanding that you cannot foul your own nest when your nest is the entire world you will ever know. Then there's energy. Our civilization is powered by burning things, by releasing energy in explosive, often polluting ways. Theirs would be a civilization of silent, constant power. They would have mastered geothermal energy, tapping into the planet's own heartbeat for a source of power that is clean, sustainable, and has been running for billions of years. They could teach us how to work with the planet's systems, instead of constantly fighting against them. And perhaps the most profound lesson they could offer us is about social stability. A society living in a finite, interconnected space cannot afford endless conflict. It cannot afford the kind of tribalism and resource wars that have defined so much of our own history on the surface. To survive, they would have had to develop systems of cooperation, governance, and conflict resolution that allowed them to live in balance for immense stretches of time. They might not have our technologies of communication, our global internet, or our satellite. But they might have a kind of social technology that is far more advanced. An understanding of how to build a society that lasts. A society that doesn't burn itself out with endless, unsustainable growth. Looking at them, we would see a reflection of ourselves. A humanity that chose depth over breadth, stability over expansion, and introspection over exploration. They wouldn't give us magical solutions, but they would offer us a new perspective. A living, breathing example that there is another way to be human. So what does that day, the day the worlds meet, ultimately look like? It is not a single day, of course. It's the beginning of a new era. An era defined by a slow, cautious, and incredibly delicate dance of discovery. It's scientists in sterile clean rooms trying to understand a biology that is both human and utterly alien. It is linguists and anthropologists spending their entire lives trying to build that bridge of understanding, concept by concept. It is a process filled with misunderstanding, with setbacks, and with immense risk. But it is also filled with a hope that is almost too profound to imagine. The hope that we could learn from them, that we could see our own destructive habits reflected in their sustainable existence, that they could show us how to become better stewards of our shared home. The meeting would force us to look in the mirror. It would hold up our society, with all its triumphs and all its flaws, and ask the question, is this the only way? And for the first time, we would know with absolute certainty that the answer is no. That, in itself, might be the greatest gift they could ever give us. The knowledge, finally, that another path is possible. A path that leads not outwards to the stars, but inwards, towards a deeper understanding of our planet and ourselves. It would be the ultimate cultural exchange, a reunion of two long-lost families, who could, if they are very careful and very wise, finally make each other a path that leads not outwards to the stars, but inwards, towards a deeper understanding of our planet and ourselves. It would be the ultimate cultural exchange, a reunion of two long-lost families, who could, if they are very careful and very wise, finally make each other whole. But for that exchange to even begin, for us to understand each other on the most basic level, we'd have to start with a very simple question. What do you value? What is your wealth? Because their answer, I think, would be one of the most profound and challenging things we would ever hear. When you and I think of wealth, what comes to mind? For most of human history, it's been the same things. Gold, silver, precious gems. We pull them from the ground, admire how they catch the light, and assign them enormous value. A diamond is valuable to us because it's rare, it's hard, and it sparkles beautifully in the sunlight. Gold doesn't tarnish. It's a permanent, shining symbol of our effort. But what would gold mean to a civilization that has never seen the sun? In a world lit by the gentle, steady glow of bioluminescent fungi, a shiny yellow metal doesn't really have the same appeal. A diamond's fire is born from its interaction with bright, direct light. In the soft ambience of a cavern, it would be just a hard, clear rock. Their entire concept of value, of what is precious, would have to be built on an entirely different foundation. It wouldn't be based on aesthetics, but on pure, undeniable function. So what is their gold? What would a subterranean king hoard in his treasury? It probably wouldn't be a medal you could wear. It might be a perfectly formed, flawless quartz crystal, 12 feet long. Not because it is pretty, but because its piezoelectric properties are essential for their technology, for creating sound or pressure sensors. Or maybe their greatest treasure would be a small, heavily guarded container holding a unique, stable isotope of an element we've never even discovered. An isotope that, when harnessed, provides clean, limitless energy for a generation. Think about the ultimate source of power in their world, the Earth's core. The geothermal vents. Control over a major, stable geothermal tap would be like owning all the oil fields and all the solar farms on the surface combined. That's not just wealth, that's power. That's life. Their most powerful figures wouldn't be kings wearing crowns of gold, but engineers and geologists who understand and manage the flow of the planet's own lifeblood. Wealth, for them, is control over the systems that allow them to exist. It is the ultimate form of pragmatism. This practical approach to value would ripple through every single aspect of their society. It would shape their industry, their politics, and their day-to-day lives in a way we might find hard to grasp. Because it all stems from one inescapable truth of their existence. Our surface economy, when you really get down to it, is like a river. We take resources from upstream, we use them, and then we dump the waste and the byproducts downstream, into the sea. We have this illusion of an away, a place where we can throw things and forget about them. Our landfills, our atmospheric carbon, the plastics in our oceans, that's our downstream. Their economy couldn't be a river. It would have to be like a pond. In a pond's ecosystem, nothing is ever wasted. When a plant dies, it decomposes and becomes food for microbes. When a fish dies, its body becomes nutrients for the plants. Every single output is an input for something else. It is a perfect, closed loop. For a civilization living in a sealed environment, this isn't a philosophy, it is the fundamental law of survival. The very concept of trash would be completely alien to them. Imagine one of their workshops. A craftsman is making a tool, maybe a complex digging instrument. The handle might be made from a hardened, cultured fungal polymer. The head is forged from metal alloyed with rare earth elements. If that tool breaks, it is not thrown away. It's brought back to the workshop. The metal is melted down, its alloys carefully separated, ready to be forged into something new. The fungal handle is taken to the agricultural caverns, where it is composted, its organic matter broken down to become the nutrient slurry that feeds the next generation of fungi. Every atom is accounted for. Every molecule is respected. Waste to them wouldn't just be inefficient, it would be a kind of theft from the future. It would be a tear in the delicate fabric of their world. So you see, their entire society would be the ultimate recycling program. Their industries would be designed not in straight lines, but in circles. The byproduct of the energy generators might be mineral-rich water, which is then piped directly to the hydroponic farms. The carbon dioxide exhaled by the population would be channeled to feed the algae vats that produce both food and oxygen. It's a perfect, intricate dance of systems. This leads to a fascinating idea of how their society might be structured. On the surface, we have nations. We draw lines on a map, often based on ancient conquests or geographical features like rivers and mountains. But underground, the most important geography isn't horizontal, it is vertical. It's geological. So their version of trade wouldn't be between nations, but between different functional levels or specialized caverns. Imagine a city that isn't a single sprawling metropolis, but a cluster of interconnected specialized biomes. High up, near the colder rock, might be the water guild. This is a vast cavern system that sits directly beneath a massive, pristine aquifer. Their entire culture, their technology, their very purpose is built around the purification and distribution of water. They are the masters of filtration and plumbing. They hold one of the keys to life. Deeper down in the warmer zones, you'd find the energy caverns. Here, the society is built around a huge geothermal vent. The people here are engineers, technicians, and physicists. They do not just use the heat, they farm it, they manage it, they channel it into the lifeblood of the entire cluster. Then, in another cavern, perhaps one with a unique mineral composition in its soil and a steady supply of recycled nutrients, you'd find the gardeners. This is where the great hydroponic farms are. Towering structures of bioluminescent lichen and fungi, carefully tended vats of algae, and subterranean fish farms in vast clear pools. None of these caverns could survive on its own. The gardeners need the power from the energy caverns and the water from the water guild. The energy caverns need the food from the gardeners and the water for their cooling systems. The water guild needs food and energy to run their pumps. They are not separate peoples. They are organs in a single, subterranean body. And what would they trade with? Would they even have money? Maybe not in the way we do. Currency is an abstraction of value. But when your needs are so concrete, energy, water, food, your trade might be just as concrete. Perhaps their economy is based on the joule, the fundamental unit of energy. The price of a liter of water or kilo of fish wouldn't be in gold coins, but in the exact energy cost required to produce and transport it. It would be a society of perfect accounting, where the laws of thermodynamics are also the laws of economics. Living this way, for thousands upon thousands of years, wouldn't just change their technology and their economy. It would fundamentally change their way of thinking. It would rewire their minds. We are a species of the horizon. We grew up on open plains, always looking to see what was beyond the next hill. Our psychology is shaped by a sense of endlessness, and with it, a sense of infinite resources. If we exhaust a forest, we move to the next one. If we pollute a river, we find a new source of water. This mindset has allowed us to spread across the entire globe, but it has also created our greatest problems. We do not have a built-in feeling for limits. A subterranean human would be the exact opposite. Every child would grow up with a visceral, day-to-day understanding of living in a closed system. They would know that the air they breathe was just recently part of a plant. They would know that the water they drink will be used, purified, and drunk again by their own grandchildren. They would understand that every resource is finite, not as an intellectual concept, but as a felt reality. This would breed a culture of incredible patience and long-term thinking. The idea of disposable anything, a plastic cup, a cheap piece of clothing, would seem like a form of madness to them. Why would you pour so much energy into creating something you intend to immediately discard? It's a violation of the Great Circle. It's just illogical. Their heroes might not be conquerors who acquire new lands, because there are no new lands to acquire. Their heroes might be the engineers who figure out how to increase the efficiency of a water purifier by 3%, saving trillions of joules of energy over a century. Or the biologists who cultivate a new strain of edible fungus that grows twice as fast using half the nutrients. Progress for them isn't about getting bigger. It is about getting better. It is about making the closed loop of their existence more elegant, more stable, and more resilient. It is the ultimate difference between our two societies. Our surface world progress is measured by growth, by expansion, by how much more we can consume. Theirs would be measured by equilibrium, by balance, and by how little they need to thrive. They would be a civilization that truly understands the meaning of enough. And when you think about it like that, you start to wonder. When we finally meet them, and we see their world without waste, their economy of pure function, their deep respect for the finite resources that sustain them, who is truly the wealthier culture? Us, with our glittering disposable treasures? Or them, with their perfect, sustainable, quiet circle of life? In the end, their greatest wealth isn't a rare crystal or control over a geothermal vent. It's their understanding. It's the deep, ingrained wisdom of knowing how to live in perfect harmony with the one home you will ever have. It is an idea that might be the most valuable gift they could ever offer us. It is an idea that might be the most valuable gift they could ever offer us. Because through this entire journey, you and I, we haven't really been spelunking through caves and caverns of rock and soil. We've been exploring the unseen tunnels of our own imagination. We've been walking through the quiet, deep places in our own minds. And that, right there, is the enduring magic of this question. The real pull of this thought experiment. We live in an age of answers. An age of maps. If you want to know what the other side of the world looks like, you do not need a ship and a brave crew anymore. You just need a smartphone. You can pull up a satellite image of a mountain peak in the Himalayas or a street corner in a city you'll never visit. We've sent probes to the frosted plains of Pluto and robots to the silent, red dust of Mars. We've dropped cameras into the crushing pressures of the Mariana Trench, illuminating creatures that live in a darkness we can barely comprehend. There's this feeling, this quiet, creeping sensation in our modern world that the maps are all filled in. The great, blank spaces that used to whisper here, be dragons, are now just labeled, categorized, and pinned. The age of grand, geographic discovery feels like it is a chapter in a history book. We know the shape of our continents, the paths of our oceans, the heights of our mountains. We've seen it all, it seems. And with that knowledge comes a strange kind of loss. A loss of the unknown. A loss of the thrill that comes with standing at the edge of a map. So, where do we turn for that feeling? Where do we find a frontier that technology hasn't already conquered and cataloged for us? We've been looking up and out for so long. To the stars, to other galaxies, searching for that spark of wonder. But what if we've been looking in the wrong direction? What if the most profound, the most compelling, the most immediate frontier isn't out there at all? What if it has been right here, all along, just beneath our feet? That's the power of this idea. It doesn't ask you to build a rocket ship. It doesn't require $1 billion budget. All it asks is for you to stand on the grass in a park or on the pavement of a city and just wonder. To feel the solidness of the ground and realize that our knowledge of it is, in many ways, just skin deep. We know the crust, but the heart of our own planet remains a place of immense mystery. The idea of a subterranean civilization takes that mystery and gives it a soul. It gives it a story. It suggests that the world isn't just a known quantity, a solved equation. It suggests that our world is still enchanted. It is the ultimate what if. It means that every rumble in the earth, every strange magnetic reading, every unexplained seismic event could be more than just geology. It could be life. It could be the echo of a world unseen. It transforms the planet from a beautiful but largely understood object into a place that might still hold the biggest secret in human history. It's like knowing there's still one unopened door in the house you've lived in your whole life. You've been in every room. You know where every creak in the floor is. You know how the sunlight hits the kitchen in the morning. You think you know the whole house. But the knowledge of that one single locked door changes everything. It adds a layer of magic to the familiar. The whole house feels a little bigger, a little more mysterious, just because of that one pocket of the unknown. That's what this idea does for our planet. It puts an unopened door right under the floorboards of our everyday world. And maybe, just maybe, the real purpose of thinking about this door isn't to wonder if we'll ever open it. Maybe it is not even about what's truly behind it. Maybe the entire point is to notice how it changes the way we see the rest of the house. Because this whole thought experiment, this journey into a hypothetical world, was never really about them. It was about us. The idea of a civilization that grew in darkness is a mirror. An inverted reflection that shows us who we are, simply by showing us everything we are not. Think back. When we imagined a culture without a sky, what were we really doing? We were teaching ourselves to see our own sky for the first time. To truly appreciate the breathtaking, simple gift of looking up into a vast open blue or a tapestry of stars. The absence of it in their world makes us realize the presence of it in ours. When we considered their biology, their pale skin and sensitive hearing, it wasn't just a science fiction exercise. It was a way to marvel at our own bodies. To understand that our skin, rich with melanin, is a direct love letter from the sun. Our eyes, built for color and distance, are a product of open plains and endless horizons. We are creatures shaped by sunlight, and we never truly feel it until we imagine a life without it. When we thought about their economy, a perfect, closed-loop system where waste is an alien concept, we weren't just designing a fictional society. We were holding up a mirror to our own. To our rivers of consumption, to our mountains of trash, to our fundamental disconnect from the finite reality of our resources. Their imagined solution gently highlights our very real problem. And when we contemplated their definition of progress, a journey inward towards balance and philosophical depth, rather than outward towards expansion and conquest, we were forced to ask ourselves a profound question. Is our way the only way? Is onward and upward the only valid direction for a species to travel? Or is there wisdom in growing down, in strengthening our roots, in finding the universe within a single stable place? Every aspect of their imagined existence serves to illuminate our own. Their silent, dark world makes us appreciate our world of sound and light. Their tight-knit cavern clans make us examine our own concepts of community and isolation. Their potential fear of our wide-open spaces makes us reconsider our own feelings about safety, exposure, and home. The idea isn't about whether it is true or not. Its truthfulness is almost irrelevant. Its real value is its power as a tool for perspective. It is a key that unlocks a new way of looking at everything we take for granted. It inverts our world so we can see it as if for the first time. That's the gift. Not the discovery of another civilization, but the rediscovery of our own. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey, back on the surface, with the sun on our faces and the solid earth beneath our feet. But perhaps it feels a little different now. Perhaps it feels less solid and more full of possibility. In our relentless pursuit of knowledge, it is easy to forget the importance of wonder. We are so focused on finding the answers that we sometimes forget the beauty of the question itself. And what question is more fundamental, more creative, more human than is the beginning of every myth and legend? It's the engine of every scientific breakthrough. It's the seed of every work of art, every novel, every dream of a better world. It is the two words that allow us to step outside of our reality for a moment, and in doing so, understand it more deeply when we return. The comfort of the unseen isn't about believing in monsters or hidden kingdoms. It is about accepting that the world is more complex, more mysterious, and more wonderful than our current maps can show. It is about finding peace in the idea that there are still secrets left to uncover. That the story of our world and of humanity might still have a surprise chapter waiting to be read. And it's a chapter that starts right here. The next time you walk outside, just take a moment. Feel the ground beneath you. It's not just holding you up. It's holding a mystery, a possibility, a quiet and persistent question, spoken not in words, but in the deep, silent language of the earth itself. After exploring all of this, after traveling so far down into this idea, the thought that will stick with me, the one I hope sticks with you, is this: the greatest discoveries aren't always about finding something new. Sometimes, they're about learning to see the place you've always been in a completely new way. And for that, all you have to do